Chapter 1. Levi Larson, a blind child in a world ruled by darkness. I can't see. My eyes. My eyes. Mommy, Mommy. Inside a half-destroyed living room, a little child was seen sitting on his knees, screaming at the top of his lungs. He had his hands grasping tightly into his face, which was covered in blood, seeping from his eye sockets. He seemed to be in so much pain. The only thing he could do was wail until his breast became rugged and short. His reaction was understandable, as his eyes had just gotten ripped out of their sockets by a tall man with a dignified, stoic expression. He was dangling them from his hand like he was holding onto a piece of fruit. Although he was wearing a black suit with a white shirt and a blue tie, not a single drop of blood tainted its fabric. On the other hand, his white-gloved hands had turned crimson, dripping with blood on the wooden floor, drop by drop. This was the result of the massacre he committed in the living room. Besides the wailing child, 2 bloodied corpses were seen lying a few meters away from Levi. Their bodies were mangled beyond recognition, filled with massive bite marks, leaving torn flesh all over the place. Yet both corpses had their hands stretched toward the little boy, leaving a scene of 2 parents desiring to protect their child, but falling hopelessly to their mortality. Silence him, but leave him alive. It won't take long before he becomes a sleepwalker, the tall man ordered expressionlessly. In an instant, a shadowy figure appeared right behind the child and landed a straight chop on his neck, silencing his whimpers. Then he waved his hand once in front of Levi's empty, bloodied sockets, and they were sealed shut. All of this happened in less than a second. As Levi's face landed on the wooden floor, feeling his blood running cold and his consciousness fading away, a single image surfaced in the darkness, filling his mind. 2 nightmarish creatures walking away from him, one bigger and scarier than the other. Seemingly sensing being seen somehow, the bigger monster turned his head around and smiled devilishly. His smile was so sinister, it started to get bigger and closer until beep, beep, beep. The irritating sound of the alarm engulfed Levi's mind, collapsing the entire nightmare and forcing him to sit up straight with a shaken visage. As drops of sweat flowed down his forehead, Levi didn't even bother to clean them. He held his beating heart and kept his head lowered as he tried to regulate his breathing, taking deep breaths with pauses in between. The moment his agitated heartbeats died down, Levi said expressionlessly, "The same nightmare again. You guys are losing your touch. Tisk, the rumors were true. You are a tough nut to crack, boy." Suddenly, 4 monstrous creatures appeared around Levi, leaving a few meters of distance between each other. It was like he was at the center of pitch-black darkness, and the only thing he could perceive were those nightmarish creatures. If someone else was in the same room, he would see nothing but Levi sitting on his bed, murmuring under his breath like a crazy person. Levi turned his head to face the one speaking, and then said calmly, "I will say the same thing I said to the ones before you. If you want to sign a contract with me, then it has to be through official channels." Official channels? Do you mean you want to become a daywalker through me? You? A crippled, useless blind? Ha, 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 ha. You guys never told me he was such a jokester. The Nightcrawler laughed, his gaping maw widening immensely, exposing a throat filled to the brim with shark-like teeth. What can I say? It was funny at the beginning, but now it's just getting sad. The other Nightcrawler, who resembled a floating, skinless golden fish, could only shake its head in annoyance. It knew that Levi wasn't joking, and if one of them were to suggest commencing with the Daywalker contract, he wouldn't hesitate to accept it in a heartbeat. But that's the thing. I would rather choose an old man with one step in the grave before I link my legacy with a worthless cripple like you. The first Nightcrawler sneered coldly. A human with no eyes desiring to become a daywalker. Truly, the joke of the century. As the last sentence resonated deeply in Levi's mind, the Nightcrawler turned around and left, no longer having interest in tormenting him. Let's get out of here. Ashcrawl will be here soon. The rest of the Nightcrawlers went away too, knowing that Levi's house was a hanging spot for quite a powerful Nightcrawler in this area. Your loss. After they left, Levi didn't seem too bothered by their words. He reached out with his hand to the right nightstand and opened the first drawer after a couple of attempts. Then he picked a small key that was placed in the rightmost corner, seemingly marking it there. After picking it up, he sat down on the side of the bed and lifted his trousers, exposing two metallic cuffs tightened around his ankles. The cuffs were connected with two small chains, which were linked to the wall. He reached down and entered the key in both holes, freeing his legs at last. As he gently massaged his ankles, Levi sighed after touching a black monitor that was secured tightly on his right ankle. Metallic cuffs and an ankle monitor. Such extreme measures might seem bizarre, but in the case of Levi, they were a must to ensure the safety of the people close to him. After the great fall of civilization 100 years ago, under the invasion of the Nightcrawlers from the shadow dimension, blind individuals, traumatized victims, mentally unstable people, and such, all became considered a national threat to the safety of the citizens. All due to the Nightcrawlers' ability to invade people's dreams if their minds were spiritually linked to the shadow dimension. The way to link it was quite simple. They had to be exposed to pitch-black darkness for more than 2 hours straight. In other words, they had to be asleep, completely blind, or willingly close their eyes for a long time to establish the link. Thus, anyone with a high index of mental instability under the new rigid laws was forced to wear this ankle monitor to keep them within the confines of their designated holy regions. It helped the governments get instant location details if they ended up getting manipulated or seduced by a Nightcrawler to sign a contract that would give away their bodies for a price. In the case of Levi, he was just shown a nightmare by those Nightcrawlers of the worst memory of his entire life. The memory of his parents getting slaughtered and having his eyes ripped out of their sockets. Such a traumatic experience was all the fuel the Nightcrawlers needed to attempt and seduce Levi to sign his life away for the price of getting his revenge. Since he was completely blind, linking him permanently to the shadow dimension, he was under their constant harassment daily for the past decade. Unfortunately, hundreds if not thousands of Nightcrawlers had given it their best, but not a single one of them managed to break Levi's mental defenses and get the best of him. It wasn't because his mental fortitude was indestructible. He simply was wise enough to understand that signing such a contract would never get him the answers he wanted, his family's retribution, and his sight back. Of course, there were bound to be some close calls, but still he pushed through. If he knew those Nightcrawlers had it in them, he would have signed those horrible contracts in a heartbeat, even if it meant becoming a sleepwalker running amok. Unbothered by the familiar crowd of distant Nightcrawlers roaming in the infinite darkness, Levi picked a small device that resembled a silver hearing aid piece on top of the nightstand. This was Neuralens, the most used device across the globe in all holy regions due to possessing all the qualities of a smartphone and the ability to produce holograms. Usually it came in pairs, an earpiece and a thin contact lens made out of hydrogels placed on a single cornea. The earpiece was the main device and was connected to the contact lens, allowing the user to tap into the services of a personal Astra AI assistant and the ability to create tiny holograms that only he could see unless he wanted to expand them. Unfortunately, Levi could only rely on AI services through sound. After picking it up, he wore it on his right ear, hiding it under his messy curly black hair. With a single press of a small button at its side, a feminine robotic voice resounded in his ear. "Welcome back, Sir Levi. What can I help you with? Please enlighten me with today's news in Tamara's settlement." Levi requested politely as he started walking towards the bathroom, keeping his hand affixed to the nearest wall to him. Although he could use the Neuralens AI to guide him to the bathroom, Levi preferred doing it on his own by counting his steps. He only relied on the device's services in unfamiliar places so that he wouldn't be always reliant on it for every simple task. In Tamara's settlement, the Sunstrike Agency has succeeded in its 20th major expedition, conquering a shadow castle and reclaiming more than 15 kilometers of surface area. Interesting, they succeeded in less than 3 days. Levi smiled a little in awe. As expected of a Tier 5 agency with a 97% clearing rate, they don't mess about in their expeditions. One of Levi's biggest dreams was to join the ranks of a high-tiered daywalker agency and also be part of the expeditions to reclaim their planet from the infestation of the Nightcrawlers. He knew that besides saving his planet, if he were to succeed in joining those agencies, finding out the truth about what happened a decade ago would be much easier. That's because those high-ranked agencies might be private, but they had significant authority in their respective holy regions. Alas, just as Levi started daydreaming of such a bright future, a low-pitched snicker suddenly assaulted him from the rear. "Boy, remove that foolish smile of yours. It ain't happening. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." Without needing to turn, Levi knew that it was Ashcrawl speaking, one of the few Nightcrawlers who had spent years hanging around him. Seeing that Levi continued wiping his face with a towel, not bothering to address his snarky remark, Ashcrawl moved in front of him, edging closer to his face. "Boy, haven't I warned you not to ignore me?" Levi slowly lifted his head and gazed directly into Ashcrawl's massive singular eye that was dominating the center of his head. The eye glowed deep crimson and had a resonating slit pupil that seemed to ripple like liquid fire, creating a bizarre hypnotic effect. There were cracks in its leathery ash-gray skin around the sunken eye, making his head resemble a deep volcanic crater on the verge of eruption. He had 3 worn skin-like wings that extended asymmetrically from his thin body. With his veined grayish skin that clung tightly to his skeletal frame, it made him resemble a fiendish nightmare that would make any child faint at first sight. Even Levi had taken more than a year before finally getting used to his terrifying appearance. This was quite telling, as he had seen tens of thousands of Nightcrawlers in the past decade. Some were terrifying, some were mystique, some were hanging together in beautiful humanoid forms, and some were even cute. Yet Ashcrawl was still one of the few ones giving him the creeps every time he saw him. It wasn't just his appearance. His entire atmosphere screamed of sinisterness. Still, after spending years in each other's company, some familiarity was bound to be born. "Ashcrawl, will there ever be a day where you will stop hating?" Levi sighed exasperatedly as he started brushing his teeth. The moment he said this, the ominous mood collapsed immediately as Ashcrawl let out a faint chuckle. Is it hating when it's fact? Levi paused to bubble the toothpaste foam in his mouth before spitting it in the sink. Then he wiped his lips and said calmly, "It will be a fact when I fail." "Truly, your delusion never ceases to amaze me." Ashcrawl floated on his back while resting his head on his long, gruesome claws. Then he threw a question at Levi, a question that always seemed to shatter Levi's dreams. "You have yet to tell me how are you to become a daywalker and absorb light when you are lacking the most important organ to make it happen?" With a cruel smile, Ashcrawl pointed at Levi's eyes. Levi went silent in front of the mirror. He knew there was a mirror there. He knew that his reflection was gazing back at him, showing him an image of a teenage boy with a sharp jawline, fair skin, messy, wet, curly black hair reaching down his neck, and most notably, 2 hideous scorched scars in place of his eyes. Levi reached out with his hand underneath his wet hair and gently caressed the scars with a soft smile playing on his thin lips. Then he uttered softly, "I know that in this era, light is worshipped and darkness is avoided. I know that everyone thinks of me as a walking time bomb, capable of turning into a sleepwalker and causing havoc at any moment. I understand that without my eyes, I can't grow as fast as the others, and my chances to sign a daywalker contract with a Nightcrawler is slim to none. I understand all of this." With the same smile, he turned to Ashcrawl and said, "You think I am delusional, but I am simply trying to make the best of my unfortunate situation. Nothing more, nothing less." After hearing this, Ashcrawl neither mocked Levi nor teased him, if even by a little. Instead, his eye gleamed for a split second. But soon the look disappeared and Ashcrawl chuckled. "Boy, for a child of your age, your maturity always freaks me. I know. I am a genius. You should strike the iron while it's hot and sign a contract with me." "You wish." "Tisk, useless." Levi clicked his tongue and went to the kitchen to prepare his breakfast, uncaring about Ashcrawl's chuckles in the background. Chapter 2, Ashcrawl. However, just as Levi opened the fridge, his ears twitched, picking up on the thundering noise of footsteps coming from the direction of the apartment's front door. Recognizing the owner of those footsteps, Levi could only sigh and close the fridge. Knock, knock. "Big bro, I am coming in." Before the burly, unpolished voice could finish echoing in the apartment, the front door was already opened widely, exposing a hunk of a man, 6'6" tall, and built like a walking tank. Although his size wasn't really the biggest out there, he was still a universal wonder as he was merely 16 years old. A year younger than Levi, yet looking like a divorced middle-aged man with a white wife-beater tank top on, tightened black shorts, and a pair of plastic slippers. His age wouldn't be questionable if it weren't for the hint of pure innocence on his face, 3 precise hair strands on his chin, and his lustrous dark ponytail. He was holding a grocery bag filled to the brim with protein-related ingredients in one hand, and in the other he was carrying a black gym bag. Since the apartment was merely slightly bigger than a studio, Arthur saw Levi standing in front of the fridge the moment the door was unlocked. Immediately his eyes lit up. "Big bro, cooking breakfast for us?" Arthur grinned widely as he put a heavy emphasis on us. "I am fasting today." Levi walked away from the kitchen, instantly losing his appetite. He went to the closet and put on his training shorts. "Tisk, you don't have to act like this. I have already eaten on the way. I just wanted something light." Arthur looked upset as he closed the door and went to the kitchen, placing the groceries on the counter. "Light, yeah right." Levi's eyebrows twitched under his thick, curly hair. While he knew his little brother was a genetic anomaly, to reach this size and build this kind of muscle without being a daywalker, it came at the price of him needing to eat 10 times the average daily. In other words, if Levi were to make breakfast, he would be cooking for the next hour to help him hit his morning protein target. "Ah, I even bought you some SR pills. You can't even cook breakfast for your little brother. How sad." Arthur sighed loudly to fish for sympathy while pulling a small orange bottle. Then he threw it in Levi's direction. "To your right, catch." Levi's ear twitched, and in an instant, his hand flashed, catching the bottle with uncanny precision. Yet neither Levi nor Arthur showed much of a reaction to this incredible scene. "I checked our balance sheet last night. We have just enough to last until the end of the month before we receive the monthly welfare check," Levi asked sternly as he tapped his finger on the bottle. "How did you afford an entire bottle?" "I did some coaching at the gym to a weird rich girl," Arthur replied casually while emptying the grocery bag. It was filled with ground beef, chicken breasts, salmon, bananas, yogurt, eggs, rice, and some vegetables. The only snack was a package of sugar-free biscuits. "Weird, how so?" Levi raised an eyebrow, knowing that his brother was always the weird one in any room. For him to call someone else weird was quite intriguing. "She is bald." Levi went silent for a moment. Sensing that he was being judged, Arthur chuckled and said, "She isn't sick or anything. She is bald by choice and keeps telling everyone to refer to her as Monk Jojo." "Monk Jojo? What's a monk?" Levi tilted his head in confusion. "Who knows?" Arthur shrugged while cracking 8 eggs into a massive cup. "I rarely associate myself with her. She always makes a scene in the gym with her peculiar exercises." "I see," Levi smiled faintly while putting a training pad in the center of the living room. "If the money is good, who cares?" "Preach, she paid me 1,000 lumen credits for a single 1-hour session." Arthur snickered. "What a fool, I would have done it for 100 to get in an extra training hour." 1,000? Not bad. Levi was quite satisfied with the payment as he knew that 1,000 lumen credits were enough to pamper themselves until the end of the month. Although he wasn't eating as heavily as his brother, he was also training with calisthenics and on a healthy protein-based diet. In this era, natural food was quite expensive primarily due to the great fall of civilization and the Nightcrawlers' insatiable hunger to feed on natural light from any source. It didn't matter if they were plants, animals, or humans. Any living being capable of absorbing direct sunlight was in the crosshairs of Nightcrawlers. Nightcrawlers fed and evolved on this type of light, but ironically, they could not absorb it directly as the sunlight was able to burn their skin off during first contact. While humans could not store and transform light into energy as plants do through photosynthesis, Nightcrawlers still primarily targeted them. It was for a simple reason. They could possess their bodies through a sleepwalker contract, bestowing them the ability to expose themselves directly to sunlight without needing protection from the shadow dimension. Fortunately, for a Nightcrawler to transform into a sleepwalker, they could not force the host into signing any bullshit contract. That's why they wait until humans sleep and invade their dreams, seeking to manipulate and seduce them to sign the contract. Here, I only need a couple of pills to earn me some extra hours for training. As Levi sat on the training pad, he poured 5 pills into his palm and threw the bottle back to his brother, knowing his location through sound. Arthur caught the bottle and started gazing at his brother in silence, taking in the sight of him dropping to the ground and hitting push-ups with immaculate form. Levi was wearing only a pair of shorts, exposing his fine-attuned body, which would make any other man absolutely jealous. If Arthur was considered a pure bodybuilder, then Levi could be called an aesthetic athlete. But Arthur wasn't relishing his big brother's physique, but the 3 clawed scars on his back. As he stared at his brother's scars, his heart couldn't help but feel heavy. Levi paused mid-set, and without lifting his head, he said calmly, "Your heartbeats have slowed down. Haven't I told you to stop feeling guilty over something you weren't responsible for?" "I know, but it still doesn't make me feel less shitty." Arthur smiled bitterly. During that horrible night, Arthur was left with his uncle in the capital city of the Holy Heliodor region. Meanwhile, Levi accompanied his parents to Tamara's settlement, as his father had a business venture that would have substantially helped grow his nightwear company. While it was fortunate that Arthur wasn't with them, it crushed him every single day to know that he wasn't there for his brother, for his parents. Although he knew he was merely 6 years old at the time and could do nothing but be added to the victims list, it still didn't alleviate his guilty conscience. "Well, feel shitty somewhere else. You are interrupting my workout." Levi shooed him away with one hand and continued doing his push-ups single-handedly. "Harsh as always, big bro." Arthur picked up their breakfast and placed them on the table next to Levi. Then he sat down and sighed. "Why are you so stubborn? I told you just to live peacefully. You don't have to force yourself to avenge our family." He narrowed his eyes coldly. "I will handle it on my own and will make sure to retrieve your vision back regardless of the cat." Levi froze in his position while in the middle of a one-arm push-up. Then he slowly raised his head, his hair covering his scorched marks, and uttered expressionlessly, "I lost my peace 10 years ago." As he was saying this, the scene before him reflected more than 6 new Nightcrawlers crowding the entire house, each of them gazing at him akin to a fresh meal. They had been talking and bothering him ever since his brother arrived, but he had already mastered the art of zoning out their voices. Arthur went silent for a moment, knowing that no one truly could understand what his brother was going through daily. It was a miracle he hadn't already lost his sanity living such a life. Arthur understood that everyone in the world could see Nightcrawlers. All they needed to do was keep their eyes closed for more than 2 hours, exposing themselves to pitch-black darkness. This was the reason humans created a drug called sleep replacement pills drops. Once taken, the consumer would enter a short period of hibernation that lasted for less than 2 hours. Yet when he woke up, he would possess the energy of someone who had slept for more than 6 hours. However, such pills were made out of ingredients harvested from a specific species of Nightcrawler's blood and other natural dimensional materials. Thus, they weren't available for everyone at all times, as the only ones capable of harvesting and collecting those materials were daywalkers. In simpler words, sleeping every single day was exclusive for daywalkers and the rich, as those pills were more precious than gold in this chaotic era. "How many?" Arthur asked coldly. 6. "Got you." Without question asked, Arthur closed his eyes and started eating his breakfast, desiring to connect his spirit to the shadow dimension and join his brother in the Nightcrawlers crowding their home. "No need. I'm planning to head out after an hour." Levi stopped him with a faint smile, knowing that his brother always had his back. "You sure? I just want to give them a piece of my mind." Arthur cracked his knuckles. "They aren't worth anyone's time. If they had anything better to do, they wouldn't be here." Levi replied calmly as he gazed directly into 6 floating Nightcrawlers surrounding him. "Talking crap about us to your brother again?" One of the Nightcrawlers smiled sinisterly while facing Levi. Just like how humans couldn't see Nightcrawlers unless they established a spiritual link with the shadow dimension, the Nightcrawlers also couldn't see or hear humans. They had to emerge physically into the world, and the only way to gain such access was through either Stygian gates or establishing a contract with humans. Before Levi could reply, another Nightcrawler shaped like a rotten eggplant, with thousands of worms biting into its surface, jumped in and said menacingly, "Boy, don't mistake our inaction for weakness." Am I wrong? You being here instead of pledging your allegiance to any Nightcrawler's nest makes you nothing but jobless bums. Levi fired back, unbothered. Ha 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 ha, he got you there. Ashcrawl's amused chuckle echoed from a distance. Heated, the Nightcrawlers all glanced in the direction of Ashcrawl, watching him lie on his side while scratching his butt cheeks with his ominous claws, not even looking in their direction. The eggplant Nightcrawler floated in the direction of Ashcrawl until he was merely 2 meters away from him. Then he uttered with a murderous grimace, "Aren't you laughing a bit too much?" Ashcrawl's chuckles died off slowly until silence invaded the spiritual bridge of darkness. The veteran Nightcrawlers, who were used to hanging out around Levi and Ashcrawl, didn't bother to educate their newest member about the hierarchy in this space. Seeing that no one spoke after him and they merely kept looking at him akin to a dead man walking, the eggplant Nightcrawlers sensed that something was wrong. "Bastard, look at me when I talk to you." Yet he doubled down, knowing that he couldn't be harmed in the spiritual bridge of darkness. After all, his physical body was in a different location in the shadow dimension, and he was here purely through spirit, just like Levi. It was like Earth and the shadow dimension were two physical planes, while the bridge of darkness was a spiritual plane connecting them through darkness. How impolite of me. Ashcrawl slowly turned his head until his massive, dreadful crimson eye faced the eggplant Nightcrawler. The moment the eggplant Nightcrawler looked at Ashcrawl's sinister eye, he heard his voice whispering near his ear. "Can you handle it, though?" In an instant, the eggplant Nightcrawler fell on his back and let out the most ear-screeching wail he could muster. Even the thousands of worms came out of his surface and crawled away from him like he was infected with the Black Plague. "Please, please, make it stop." I don't understand." Ashcrawl tilted his head in confusion while still staring at him. "I thought you wanted me to look at you." "Mercy, mercy." The eggplant Nightcrawler screamed for a few more seconds before finally caving in to whatever agony he was put in. Levi and the other Nightcrawlers could only watch in silence as the eggplant Nightcrawler faded into nothingness. As Ashcrawl's gleaming crimson eye snapped at them, no one dared to share eye contact with him. Even Levi kept his head lowered, continuing with his push-ups, like the whole situation didn't involve him. That's what I thought. Seeing this, Ashcrawl returned to his relaxation session. Chapter 3. The Sun Disk Towers. After Levi was done with his daily workout routine, he went to take a quick shower, uncaring that a crowd of monstrous nightmares was seeing his private parts. As for what happened earlier, he was already used to it. Levi wasn't given the creeps by Ashcrawl for no reason. He had seen him do unspeakable things to Nightcrawlers, provoking him quite often until he built a reputation around him. Unfortunately for the eggplant Nightcrawler, he knew no better. On the other hand, while Ashcrawl always teased and bothered Levi, he had never invaded his dreams or assaulted him. When Levi was done with his shower, he walked to the closet with one hand stretched forward, counting as always. His hand touched the automatic closet, and with a press of a button, it opened to a specific set of clothes that were identical to each other, black pants and a white t-shirt with a baggy hoodie. It was like he had no interest in fashion and just wanted to be as comfortable as possible. After putting on his clothes, he wore standardized white sneakers, which had become somewhat dirty. Then he put on black sunglasses with a circular design and closed the closet. As he reached the door, he slid his hand to the side and picked up an average white cane. However, the moment he unlocked the door, Arthur was already next to him in the same outfit and a half-eaten banana stuffed in his mouth. "Where are we going?" Arthur asked with his mouth full, seemingly uncaring about hijacking his brother's alone time. "Seeking a recommendation letter for the contract ritual assembly." Levi answered calmly. "This again, aight." Arthur wasn't in the mood to argue about this subject again. He had already said and did everything to stop his brother from participating in the contract ritual assembly with him. It wasn't that he didn't believe in him, but he knew that one of the main prerequisites of becoming a daywalker was to have eyes that possessed a great resistance to sunlight. There was a fine line between having great resistance to light and being completely immune to it. In Levi's case, the only way to absorb light was through his skin or by eating growth totems. Both methods were quite inconsistent compared to using one's eyes to stare directly into the sunlight. For humans, light was just, light, but for Nightcrawlers, it was their main source of growth and evolution. It was everything to them. However, they were cursed to desire it, but have no resistance to it directly. In other words, if they wanted to feed on light, they had to do it in 4 ways. Feed the light absorbed by plants, feed on humans or animals directly, or sign a contract with a human to possess his body. While the first parts were self-explanatory, the last one was where it got tricky, as Nightcrawlers could either sign a beneficial contract for both parties or a one-sided contract in favor of each party. Of course, it was almost impossible for a Nightcrawler to sign a contract that disadvantaged it. This left us with Nightcrawlers attempting to seduce the mentally weak humans to hand over their bodies for a cheap price of either quick revenge, destruction, or such evil desires. Those sorts of contracts gave birth to sleepwalkers, humanoid monsters with the ability to shapeshift and move in both light and darkness. But when a beneficial contract for both parties was signed, a daywalker was born. In Levi's case, he was considered a muggle just like every other blind person in the world, having the worst possible talent to grow as a daywalker. Brother, even by some miracle, we obtained a recommendation letter from an established agency, and you were allowed into the ceremony. What are you going to do at the last part of the ritual? Arthur smiled wryly. You know that at the end of the day, it's the Nightcrawlers who are choosing their potential partners, not us at least, for the less talented. In your case, the Nightcrawlers won't see much value in the amount of light you absorb daily. I would hate to see you get rejected by those ugly fuckers in front of everyone. If I get rejected, so be it, but one step at a time, one step at a time. Levi seemed unbothered by this many odds stacking against him. Odds were enough to break even a normal citizen down and force him to quit before starting. But not Levi. For him, he would never rest in peace until he met the 2 Nightcrawlers of his nightmare. By the way, shouldn't you be in school by now? Levi's voice suddenly turned stern, sending shivers down Arthur's spine. He might be 6,006 inches tall and built like a tower, but before Levi, he was always the little brother, even when there was a mere 1-year difference. Come on, Levi, we have only 1 month left before the semester ends, and also the contract ritual assembly is in 2 months. With my sexy physique, I am bound to pass the trials and become a certified daywalker. Arthur tried to appease his brother. School will be useless then, as I will be joining the Grand Daywalkers Training Center. Levi went silent, knowing that his brother was speaking tons of sense. For normal commoners, high school and college were still a must to secure some resemblance of a good future. But for those aiming to become daywalkers, they got trained from birth on almost everything. Sometimes it still wouldn't be enough to become one. One would wonder, why was a daywalker's occupation so coveted? It was simple. Daywalkers were the heroes of today's age, the guardians of humanity, the only ones slowing down the encroachment of darkness, and most importantly, the most authoritative beings in the entire world. Almost all the Holy Region's governors were powerful daywalkers capable of creating miracles with a snap of a finger. In this age, there was no such thing as a commoner politician. Thus, becoming a daywalker would set anyone apart from the herd. Yet the biggest upside of becoming a daywalker was their ability to sleep whenever they needed to, since the contracted Nightcrawler would protect them from others' invasion. While Arthur's words made sense, Levi still said with a lowered voice, Arthur, don't argue with me. I don't want you to stay in school for a grade. I just want you to gain knowledge. Don't forget, there is also a trial for intelligence in your precious plan. Are you insulting my intelligence, huh? Arthur seemed annoyed. Just because I have big muscles doesn't mean I am dumb. What's 7 multiplied by 8? Levi asked with a serene tone. This, 100 and... Maybe you should stop hitting weights and start hitting them books. You will bring shame to our family name during the assembly. Levi interrupted with a vexed sigh. Not if you were there. Arthur roasted back with a wide grin. Asshole, you know it frowned upon to abuse the disabled. Levi chuckled. So be it. Go wear something else. We might be out for a while. Where are we going? Borders. Borders, Arthur laughed. Smart. We have already gotten kicked out of every private agency in the settlement. We might as well visit their daywalkers at the borders. But how are we going to enter the outpost? Don't worry, I have it covered. Aight, As Arthur walked outside of the apartment complex, feasting his eyes on the breathtaking scenery of Tamara's settlement, Levi was met with a sea of nightcrawlers floating all over the place, hunting down new traumatized victims and waiting for any Stygian gates to open up. Unfortunately for them, there wasn't an ounce of darkness in the settlement, as it was entirely built to limit the nightcrawlers' access. That's because portals linked to the shadow dimension opened up only after 15 minutes passed in an area completely pitch dark. This pushed all the holy regions to design the cities with glass roofs on buildings and place synthetic protective light in every nook and cranny. This ensured that during the day, it was nearly impossible for any Stygian gate to open up and cause an invasion right at the heart of the settlements and capital cities unless there was some foul blaze. Of course, there was an entire department responsible for supervising the quality of the synthetic light network across each city. As for the night and underground's darkness, for now, let's say humans were protected by divine intervention. Meanwhile, Levi and Arthur rode on an electric dirt bike and drove towards the borders, skiving off cars and pedestrians, unbothered by their curses at Arthur's reckless driving. After driving for a short while, they reached the outskirts of Tamara's settlement, traveling on top of beautiful yellow wheat fields while the sunlight shone brightly on their skin. A few people were sitting on top of trees or the center of the fields in a meditation position while having their eyes affixed on the radiant sun. Levi and Arthur paid them no attention, as it was a common occurrence for daywalkers to absorb direct sunlight in open natural fields. The peace, the wind, the smell, and the lack of buildings helped them be more attuned to their bodies and their shadow life seed. It must be a clear sky today. Feeling the warm light, Levi couldn't help but raise his head, seemingly wanting nothing more but to gaze at the breathtaking blue sky. But all that was reflected was eternal darkness and the ugliness of the nightcrawlers crowding the skies. Although the noise buried Levi's voice, Arthur held Levi's hand and pointed his finger at specific places in the sky. Then he started describing with a foolish, happy smile. There is a cloud there that looks just like a massive sword. Right next to it, another cloud resembled a headless turtle. The other one it looks like that thing we use to unclog toilets and sinks, what is called plunger. Levi smiled on. Plunger. Yes, it totally escaped my mind. Arthur laughed and continued describing anything interesting that he saw on the way. While his vocabulary was weak, his brother always guessed what he meant, seemingly reading his thoughts. Levi might have gone blind at 7 years old, but this didn't stop him from reading and knowing about the world. In fact, it made him focus on nothing but reading, knowing that it was the only way for him to draw the world in his mind. After a short while, the Larson brothers arrived at the borders of the Holy Heliodor region. Tamara's settlement was one of the few settlements in the region situated extremely close to the borders. That's why it was populated with many branches of high-tiered daywalkers agencies in the capital. We are getting close to the Sun Disk Towers, Arthur shared as he gazed at tens of tall towers, reaching up to 200 meters each. Each tower was separated from the other at a great distance, surpassing many kilometers. Levi and Arthur knew that those towers surrounded the borders of the Holy Heliodor region in a massive circle, mirroring the movement of the Holy Pillar. Those towers were powered by sunlight and possessed gigantic mirrors able to reflect concentrated beams of sunlight in 360 degrees, turning them into killing machines for nightcrawlers at the borders. Arthur drove to the nearest tower and was forced to stop at the heavily guarded gates of the outposts surrounding the tower. There was already a long queue, awaiting their turn to be checked by the guards, as no one was allowed entries to those outposts unless they were certified daywalkers or approved citizens. Levi and Arthur were neither, leaving them to park their dirt bike at the side of the outpost walls and watch the moving queue. While Arthur was scanning the daywalkers from the citizens, Levi was eyeing the contracted nightcrawlers, each hovering in a small radius, staying near their partners. Before long, Levi's presence attracted the majority of the nightcrawlers, and they all switched their attention to him. A rocky hog with gleaming green cracks, piercing blue eyes, and two thick tails moved towards Levi and wondered with a hint of scorn, "Is this the infamous soulless gaze? He doesn't look the part. Were the rumors inflated?" Doubtful. There is only one infamous blind kid in this area. A hulking insect-like beast with a hardened exoskeleton and amber eyes commentated calmly as he kept floating around Levi. While Levi was surrounded on both sides, he didn't bother to glance at these two Nightcrawlers. He kept his indifferent sockets affixed on a hazy serpent-manta hybrid with shimmering red scales and a long tail seeping with blood. Soulless gaze, a child with an unbreakable mental, and Oastboyne as hollow as an abyss. The serpentine Nightcrawler uttered near Levi's ears. I heard you were begging for any Nightcrawler to make you a daywalker. Is that still the case? Why are you asking? Are you planning to refer me to your friends? Levi whispered with a faint smile. Arthur saw his brother talking to himself and knew immediately that he was conversing with Nightcrawlers. Although his brother didn't tell him what he planned on doing, he trusted that he had it covered. It was for a simple reason. Arthur had never met with someone as shrewd and smart as his big brother. That's why he respected him and listened to whatever he told him to do, knowing that it would always be for his good sake, even if he didn't understand it at the time. Meanwhile, Levi's comment left the three Nightcrawlers to chuckle in amusement. The rumors told no lies. You have no shame when it comes to securing a contract. Shame doesn't pay the bills. Levi still had the same smile. Shame won't get me my peace and vision back. So how about we drop this meaningless shakedown and get to business? Business? Bleeder narrowed his eyes menacingly, but with a hidden hint of intrigue. What does a hairless child know about business? I know that your partner is trying to help you evolve to Tier 3 through a remarkable evolution. Levi's tone became serene as he gazed straight into Bleeder's eyes. The chuckles died off and the amused expressions melted away. The three Nightcrawlers all stared at each other with a tint of surprise before finally looking back at Levi, this time with penetrative, cold gazes. Chapter 4, The Nightcrawlers' Evolutionary Paths. Boy, you have 3 seconds to tell me your source of information before I slice your neck off. Bleeder's voice turned sinister. Levi knew that his threat was for real since he was a contracted Nightcrawler, which meant his partner wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger if she found out that their private information was leaked. Still, he was unfazed. Calm down. I have deducted your plight on my own. Levi clarified with a relaxed tone. This outpost leads to the harrowing forest, the only place in the entire northern Africa district with a compatible soil for the blood crystal flowers to grow in. I know that your species requires either blood crystal seeds for a limited evolution or the blood crystal flower for a remarkable evolution. He paused. While the seeds can easily be obtained, the blood crystal flowers sprout only at the depths of the harrowing forest. It was off grounds before due to being ruled by a shadow castle, but with the Sunstrike Agency clearing it, the forest finally became somewhat safe for rogue and low-ranked daywalkers to explore it. I believe the 3 of you are part of the same daywalkers squad on a mission to locate the flower, as you don't seem interested in having a mere limited evolution. Do I need to say more? When he finished, the 3 Nightcrawlers were left somewhat dazed, realizing that Levi had hit the nail on the head about almost everything. Seeing their reaction, Levi went silent for a moment and leaned closer to Bleeder until his mouth was next to his ears. Then he whispered, What if I told you that I know a way with a high chance of helping you secure the unattainable, perfect evolution? Get the fuck out of here! Bleeder immediately pulled away from Levi like he had just heard the worst joke to grace his ears. Perfect evolution? Boy, you don't have to bullshit us. We ain't going to help you get contracted. Ha 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 ha. Perfect evolution, he said. Bleeder and Shia are struggling to even pull off remarkable evolution. The other 2 Nightcrawlers also snickered at Levi's remarks, not taking him seriously in the slightest. Their reaction was understandable. Nightcrawlers were believed to be separated into 9 tiers, starting from Tier 1 and reaching their final form at Tier 9. Since Nightcrawlers were considered a race with an unknown number of species and variants, some were born as low as Tier 1, and some were believed to be born straight as Tier 9, though no one could be certain about the latter. The only certainty was that every single Nightcrawler was capable of evolving to its final form, whether it ended at Tier 5, 6, 7, or even 9. The little evolutions along the way controlled the final form's limitation. Those mini-evolutions occur between each tier and could range from a limited evolution to a remarkable evolution and finally a perfect evolution. In simpler terms, if a Tier 1 Nightcrawler evolved to Tier 4 using nothing but limited evolution each time, His final form might have been completed at Tier 4 forever. On the other hand, if a Tier 1 Nightcrawler grew using nothing but perfect evolution between each tier, there was a strong chance that its potential would be finalized at Tier 8 or 9. The only problem with the second method was the difficulty. It was so high that only a select few dared to follow this treacherous and unknown path. You can laugh all you want, but you guys do realize that I have been associating myself with thousands, if not tens of thousands of Nightcrawlers across a decade. Levi replied with his known, unprovocative smile. Don't you think I might have heard something useful here and there? Bleeder and the other Nightcrawlers shared knowing glances, realizing that Levi had a point. The main concern with perfect evolution was the lack of knowledge. While limited and remarkable evolutions also required many trials and errors before a known evolutionary path was discovered, perfect evolutions were on a whole different level. For instance, Bleeder's species were of the blood half mantras, and they were known for requiring blood crystal seeds as the main material and a couple more secondary materials to succeed in limited evolution for the first 3 tiers. The blood crystal flowers as the main material for the remarkable evolution. Both evolutionary paths were discovered by the greatest evolutionist, Dr. Isaac Mendel. He was also responsible for discovering many of the evolutionary paths for thousands of other Nightcrawlers, helping the Daywalkers grow more powerful than ever. However, even though he was one of the brightest minds in this era, he had found only 100 perfect evolution paths in total. Those evolutionary paths usually last for 3 tiers or fewer. This spoke volumes about how difficult a process it was. Why are you telling me this? Bleeder narrowed his eyes. Let's say you are being truthful. What do you gain from this? If you want my help to get you a contract, then forget it. I don't have that much sway. Don't be jumping to conclusions. Levi said calmly, all I want is a written recommendation letter to participate in the contract ritual assembly. Recommendation letter? You want our agency to sponsor you in the assembly? Bleeder and the other Nightcrawlers raised their eyebrows in surprise. Yes. Realizing that Levi was as serious as one could be, the 3 Nightcrawlers couldn't muster a single bad remark. There was a point when mockery lost its value. Soulless gaze. I don't know if you are simply crazy or a fool who has yet to be slapped in the face. Bleeder shrugged his wings. To be honest, I don't give a shit. If your information is right, I will get you the recommendation. That's all I want, Levi smiled. Bleeder gave a slight head nod to his buddies, and then they returned to their partners, relaying the news to them. Arthi, check for a 3-member squad in the queue holding their weapons and tell me what they are doing. Levi requested while leaning against the dirt bike, gazing at the 3 Nightcrawlers, who had just disappeared out of his sight and turned into humanoid, hazy auras. He knew that contracted Nightcrawlers could jump between the shadow dimension and the real world whenever they desired. However, they could not coexist in both of them simultaneously. Their current spiritual aura forms implied that they had taken their physical weapon form to join the conversation. It wasn't like they couldn't speak with their partner without being in the shadow dimension, but they could only converse telepathically. As expected, Arthur swiftly located 2 men and 1 woman huddled in a small area, conversing amongst each other while looking in their direction. All 3 of them had their signature weapons out. They keep pointing at us while talking. Arthur described, the 2 men don't seem too pleased while the woman looks like she is trying to convince them of something. I see. What did you do? Arthur asked, curious. Levi informed him about the details of the deal, leaving his brother with his eyebrows raised in surprise. When he finished, Arthur asked him again, do you really know his Tier 3 perfect evolutionary path? Of course not. If I did, I would have sold it long ago. Levi replied, Mom's textbooks never went into exact details on each Nightcrawler's evolutionary path. Arthur stared at his brother speechlessly. Knowing that his little brother was questioning his decisions, Levi turned to face him and said calmly, sometimes a risk has to be taken to move forward. Chapter 5, Nocturnal Contract. Risk. Brother, if you were found lying to 3 Daywalkers while already being under surveillance, no one would care if you got killed, Arthur said with a hardened tone while eyeing Levi's beeping ankle monitor hidden under his trousers. I know, but don't worry. If I didn't have it covered, I wouldn't have included you. You know I don't give a shit what happens to me. Arthur narrowed his eyes at the approaching squad. Do your thing, I got you. Before Levi could reply, Arthur tapped him twice on the shoulder, silencing him immediately. This was their signal of people being too close to Levi's comfort. A moment later, a delicate short girl stood in front of Levi and Arthur while being accompanied by a tall, dark-skinned man and a short man with a big belly. The girl had short hair that resembled a crimson blood drop and was wearing thin orange sunglasses. She had a skin-tight red suit covered with a half-open black jacket. She had her hands inside her jacket's pockets while sucking on a lollipop with a white plastic stick. While Levi couldn't see her appearance, the smell of blood on her was too stenchy. He couldn't help but scrunch his nose. The girl saw his reaction and didn't seem bothered. In fact, she was amused by it. Not a fan of my smell? She asked. Her voice was as lovely as her face. My apologies. My nose is a bit sensitive, Levi said politely. Understandable for someone with your condition, Shia spoke as she kept moving her head from side to side, seemingly incapable of believing Levi's condition. When she saw that his head was affixed in its place, she couldn't help but utter with a hint of marvel in her voice. How interesting. I thought everyone with complete blindness had already gone extinct or had eye replacement surgery, Shia murmured to herself, but Levi heard her as loud as thunder. Shia, we have no time for this. Night is fast approaching, and if we want to reach the depth of the forest before sunset, we have to move now. The short man spoke coldly as he gazed at the Larson brothers. From first sight, I can tell they are full of it. Suddenly, a crimson crescent-bladed glaive with a curved blade came out of Shia's black jacket, exuding an ominous, bloodthirsty aura. The moment everyone's eyes affixed on it, Bleeder's mouth and eyes manifested on the weapon. He didn't seem pleased one bit. Fatty, are you questioning my judgment? He asked coldly. Yes, when was your judgment ever right? Just as Bleeder was about to snap back at him, Shia intervened. Sergio Bleeder, we have already discussed this. Let's find out what kind of information he has, and then we can make our judgment. Uncaring that Levi and Arthur heard her, Shia showed them a pleasant smile and said, We don't have much time, so let's carry our conversation inside. Please lead the way. Levi smiled back. A few moments later, Shia's squad had gotten inside the outpost and brought Levi and Arthur with them. The guards allowed them in since they belonged to a quite well-known agency in the Holy Heliodor region. Of course, they had to pay up a fee. Whoa, this place is packed with daywalkers, Arthur exclaimed as he kept spinning his head all over the place, leaving no area unscanned. Meanwhile, Levi was also receiving information from his Neuralens's AI, as she was able to scan a 10-meter radius and give Levi detailed descriptions of everything in the radius. With her help, he was able to envision the appearance of the outpost. It wasn't anything special, as it resembled a small town with mostly transparent, glass-based buildings arranged in a perfect structure that allowed all the streets to meet at a single point, the center of the outpost where the tall sun disk tower was built. After a short walk, Shia and her companions brought the Larson brothers to a motel room for some privacy. Then, Shia sat on the bed while the other two stood near the corners. Levi and Arthur were offered chairs and a herbal tea while facing Shia directly. Now, will you kindly tell us how you plan on helping Bleeder achieve perfect evolution to Tier 3? Shia asked with a kind smile. In the hopes that Levi's information would be correct, she was respectful, kind, and understanding. However, Levi knew that her nice attitude was a mere facade. Hold on now. How will be assured that you will keep your end of the bargain if I spill the beans? Levi asked. Fair enough. Shia brought out Bleeder and placed it in front of them. Then she said, I am willing to sign a nocturnal contract. Sergio and Jamal's expressions immediately turned gloomy. Shia. Before they could say anything, Shia silenced them with a hand to Wanyan Hamam. Then she turned back to Levi and smiled. If your method checks out, I will risk my own neck and reputation to ensure that you participate in the contract ritual assembly. We will have this written in nocturnal contract. Levi corrected her with a similar smile. Not any contract ritual assembly. I am only interested in the upcoming 1 and 2 months. Of course, that's what I meant. While she said this, the thoughts in her mind were different. He might be young, but he isn't easily fooled. Without further ado, Shia tapped once on her signature weapon, and a pitch-black, spiritual piece of paper manifested before everyone. It floated at the center, turning the atmosphere quite solemn. This was a nocturnal contract, the sole reason Nightcrawlers and humans had a chance of coexistence. No one knew of its origins besides a false name for its creator. Not even high-tiered Nightcrawlers had a clue. The only thing known was that its terms must be respected at all costs, as the moment both parties signed the contract, their souls were bonded by it. If a party were to void a term, the contract would deliver the written penalty instantly. It possessed such an overwhelming and mysterious authority that its presence always commanded attention. Just as Shia was about to write the terms, Levi interrupted with an apologetic smile. "Before we sign, I have to confess something." "God damn it, I knew he was full of shit," Sergio snapped instantly. "Boy, were you lying to me?" Even Bleeder's expression turned sinister. "Hold on, give him a chance." Meanwhile, Shia still had hope in Levi, halting her partners from doing something that would jeopardize the deal. "Thank you." Levi nodded politely and then explained, "First of all, I have never guaranteed that my method will succeed 100%. All I said was that I have a method to help him achieve the unattainable perfect evolution. Whether it succeeds or fails, it depends heavily on your cooperation." "What do you mean?" Shia held her chin in intrigue. "I have my ways, and at the moment, I have no interest in sharing details." Levi said calmly, "If you truly desire perfect evolution, all you can do is put your trust in me." "Trust?" Shia stood up and walked to the reflective glass wall. As she gazed at the rogue daywalkers forming exploration squads in front of the outpost's exit, she shared with a serene voice, "In our world, trust has lost its value. Everyone and everything requires the addition of nocturnal contracts. Even the lifelong partnership with our contracted Nightcrawlers can only work when our life and death are bound together." She turned to face Levi and added, "You also know this. Otherwise, you wouldn't have accepted the use of a nocturnal contract." Levi nodded in agreement. "So I can tell you right here, I don't trust you, but I do trust that you will give it your all if you put your life on the line." With the same kind smile, Shia asked, "So tell me, are you confident enough in your method that you are willing to sign off your life to me in case you fail?" Levi went silent. He understood that Shia wanted him to sign off a lifelong subordinate contract, which was nothing but a fancy name for a slave. With the introduction of nocturnal contracts and their absolute power, slavery became quite rampant in the world. Of course, since the term was frowned upon, it was changed to a lifelong subordinate. Since only entities with shadow life seeds could summon the nocturnal contract, most daywalkers had several lifelong subordinates under their name. "Brother, you won't sign such crap, right?" Suddenly, Arthur's solemn voice resounded in Levi's ear, coming from the earpiece. Since it was attached straight to the ear, the messages sent were heard solely by the owner, unless there was someone with extremely sensitive ears nearby. Levi merely showed him a comfortable smile, unfazed. Arthur knew that his brother couldn't use holograms, so he was unable to send a message or a vocal without being heard by their company. Okay. Although Arthur was quite bothered by the whole deal, all he could do was put his trust in his brother. Facing straight ahead, Levi asked, "May I ask why you want me to work under you?" His question resonated with Sergio and Jamal as they also gazed at their friend Shia, wondering what she wanted from a blind kid. "I don't know yet. Consider me intrigued." Shia licked her lower lip. It's quite rare to find someone with complete blindness still alive and sane. While her answer left her partner somewhat speechless, realizing that she was seeing Levi as a plaything, it didn't bother Levi. "Fair enough," he replied calmly. "I am willing to approve these terms." The moment he said this, silence engulfed the motel room. Even Shia was a bit taken aback, raising her eyebrows in surprise. She expected him to negotiate the contract, understanding that her terms were quite extreme. She knew that securing a perfect evolution was nothing but simple. She had low hopes that a blind teenager would help her achieve it, even if he were to hear something from the Nightcrawlers hanging around him. After all, how would he know for sure that it would work? But now everything changed. "Your confidence gives me hope." Shia's eyes gleamed in excitement under her sunglasses. Chapter 6. 5 minutes. A few minutes later, the contract terms were finalized, leaving both parties somewhat satisfied. In the case of Levi, he made sure to include 3 big terms. Firstly, Arthur would not be harmed or affected by her party, whether Bleeder's evolution succeeded or failed. Secondly, if the evolution went through as anticipated, Shia had to ensure that Levi joined the contract ritual assembly in the next 2 months regardless of the cost. If she failed to deliver, she would pay 10 million lumen in credit to Levi. This wasn't all. She had to attempt sponsoring him for the next years until he successfully joined. Each year she failed, she had to pay him the same amount again. This condition was extremely harsh, as 10 million lumens wasn't an amount any daywalker could produce easily. Only high-ranked or rich daywalkers could afford such a penalty. Third, if he were to succeed, they must not speak of this deal with anyone or mention his name. In other words, this was a one-time deal. After the terms were written in luminous ink on the nocturnal contract, Shia went first and signed her full name at the bottom. When she finished, she extended her palm at the contract. Her eager smile couldn't be maintained. "Excuse me, is it possible to have 10 minutes with my little brother?" Levi suddenly requested with a soft smile. "I would like to put his mind at ease." "Little brother?" Shia tilted her head in confusion and then glanced at the agitated mountain behind Levi. "That's your little brother?" Jamal's eyes widened. "Are you messing with me? He looks older than us." "Yes, he is 1 year younger than me," Levi replied calmly. "The hell? Are you telling me this behemoth is still a teenager?" Sergio gulped a mouthful as lifted his head to look at Arthur's face, almost breaking his neck in the process. "Guys, this is not the time." Although Shia was just as shocked as her partners, she still brought back the conversation to the more important subject. "You can have 5 minutes tops." She approved and walked to the room's door, followed by her squad mates, whose dumbfounded eyes never left Arthur. "That will do." Levi nodded in appreciation. The moment the door was closed and Arthur saw them keep a respectful distance, he immediately turned to face Levi. "Big bro, what's your next move?" He asked. "Did you find Bleeder's perfect evolution?" "How could I?" Levi chuckled. "I never left your sight." "Levi, how can you laugh in this fucked up situation?" Arthur scratched his head in agitation, trying his best to understand his brother's angle, but failing miserably. While he wasn't the brightest of minds, he had read the terms of the contract. There wasn't an ounce of playwork or fine print in the terms. In other words, unless Levi genuinely produced a method to help Bleeder's evolution, he was cooked beyond reproach. "Arthur, relax." With the same serene smile, Levi said, "While I don't know the answer, I know who does." "Huh? What do you mean?" Arthur lifted his head in confusion, but Levi's attention was already on someone else. "Ashgirl, don't you think it's time we are done with foreplay?" he asked as he gazed at the infinite darkness before him. Surprisingly, not a single Nightcrawler had invaded Levi's personal space, even though he was in an outpost packed with daywalkers. It was all because of one entity. "Boy, I don't swing that way." Ashgirl emerged from the darkness, his sinister crimson eye manifesting first akin to the awakening of a slumbering devil. "I don't think we have time for jokes." Levi tapped on his wrist twice and said calmly, "We have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to negotiate our daywalker contract terms." "Boy, have you finally gone mad?" Ashgirl twisted himself around Levi, akin to a serpentine without touching him. He brought his menacing slit in front of him, seemingly trying to read out Levi's motives. "Ashcrawl, please don't insult my intelligence." Levi said composedly, "I may not have eyes, but my observation skills aren't to be underestimated." "What are you on about?" Ashcrawl frowned. "I see you want to act dumb all the way." "Fine by me." Levi leaned against the chair and picked up the teacup on the small table on his side after a couple of attempts. Then he took a sip and started speaking, his tone unchanging. 10 years. For an entire decade, you have been beside me. You were the first Nightcrawler I have laid my eyes on as a child after the incident. While you scared the living crap out of me and gave me unspeakable nightmares, I realized something. He smiled. Those nightmares were normal, and they continued for 5 years until I reached 12, the minimum required age for a human to sign his name on a nocturnal contract. Ashcrawl remained quiet. Unbothered by his silence, Levi continued on. While the nightmares were normal, I couldn't help but note that all of them shared one single detail. You possessing my body at the end. I am sure you aren't foolish to leave behind such an obvious hint of your strong desire to own my body, which made me believe that it was my intuition warning me about you. Arthur listened to his brother's whispers, realizing that he was talking to a nightcrawler in the Bridge of Darkness. While he had no idea what he was talking about, he kept his ears open and didn't interrupt him. Once I became 12 years old, that's when you pulled back and watched as the Nightcrawlers held a free buffet each day to torment me. Some invaded my dreams when I slept. Some kept showing me the most hideous scenes known to mankind, and some were outright making it impossible for me to live. Levi paused, still maintaining the same serene smile, like he was retelling a story unrelated to him, instead of a childhood trauma that no one could imagine. Yet throughout all of that misery, you made sure to eliminate any nightcrawler that seemed close to winning me over. You might not know, but I have a really strong memory and remember every single nightcrawler my spiritual eyes landed on. Every one of them. He intoned word by word while looking straight into Ashcrawl's gleaming red eye. Ashcrawl still refused to interject. One disappearance might be a lucky coincidence, but every time? Levi chuckled. You can imagine my surprise when I realized that you were my guardian angel, keeping me safe until I grew to my late teen years. While Levi's mental fortitude also played a heavy role, he was still a child with dead parents and a future inhabited by outlandish creatures. There were bound to be some close calls where he simply wanted to give up. You're welcome, Ashcrawl finally spoke, his voice devoid of emotions. Welcome, ha 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 ha. Levi couldn't help but break out laughing wildly, his white pearly teeth fully showing. Your shamelessness truly puts mine to shame. Levi's chuckles died down, and then he carried on coldly. You think I haven't figured out that you were behind all of it? That it was you using those nightcrawlers to cripple my spirit for the promised day? The promised day? Ashcrawl's slit thinned a little. Yes, the day when I realized that my dream of becoming a daywalker is nothing but a dream. Levi sneered. It would have happened either in the contract ritual ceremony or after I reached 30 years old, the final window of becoming a daywalker. That's when you planned on swooping in and giving me the worst possible contract a daywalker can sign in his life, knowing that I will have no other choice but to sign it if I want my questions answered and my vengeance fulfillment. Well, guess what? I have no interest in wasting another year, begging for a recommendation letter, knowing that even if I obtained it and aced the trials, no nightcrawler but you will want me. Levi turned to face Ashcrawl and said expressionlessly, so I decided to take the initiative and choose the date of the promised day. Like it or not, it's happening today. After he was done, Levi merely picked up the teacup and took another sip, quenching his dried throat. Then he asked Astra Eye how much time was left for the 5 minutes to finish. 1 minute. Your move, Levi uttered, unfazed. Chapter 7, right here, right now. Ashcrawl remained silent for a few moments before finally breaking into a burst of wicked laughter. Boy, your imagination is on a different dimension. Ashcrawl narrowed his eyes. Your foolishness will be the end of you. Why would you assume I would go through so much trouble just to sign a daywalker contract with you? You do know if I wanted to possess your body, I would have done it years ago? Ashcrawl sneered. You think you had it in you to stop me from turning you into a sleepwalker? Not at all, Levi answered calmly. I knew deep down that you could have easily convinced me to sign a sleepwalker contract. Your unfathomable strength would have been enough to win me over and hand you my body for the sake of vengeance. If you know this much, how can you reach such an idiotic conclusion? Ashcrawl said. It's because I know this much that I am confident in my judgment. Levi replied calmly, while I have no idea why you prefer a daywalker contract instead of a sleepwalker, I am certain that you want something from me, something that even I don't know about. 30 seconds, Astra Eye announced in the background. Ashcrawl, you either negotiate the daywalker contract terms with me and help me fulfill the deal with Shia, or you can watch me sign my life away. For I know it's more precious to you than to me. Levi uttered one last time. Ashcrawl narrowed his slit at Levi, noticing that he hadn't flinched once. Still, he refused to accept that his scheme was figured out. Well, you should stop your bluff while you still can, he advised. 20 seconds. Levi remained silent and continued taking small sips of his herbal tea. In his eyes, he had already said more than enough. If Ashcrawl still refused to cooperate, this could only mean that he had misjudged the situation or he was holding strong until the last second. Either way, Levi had made peace with his decision. 10 seconds. Still no reaction from Ashcrawl or Levi. 5 seconds. Big bro, they are coming back. Arthur informed with an antsy look at the sight of Shia and her partners approaching the motel room. He heard everything and understood that his brother was in a game of chicken with Ashcrawl using his soul as the price. While he couldn't hear Ashcrawl's response, he could deduce that the situation wasn't going in his brother's favor. Unfortunately, no miracle was in sight. 3, 2, 1, 0. Cling! The room's door opened and Shia entered the room. Jamal closed the door behind him and each of them returned to their original position. Thank you for your patience. Levi smiled gently. Oh? Shia narrowed her eyes. You have a deal. The moment Levi said this, he extended his fingers towards the spiritual pitch-black paper, which appeared in his line of sight as well. Then a gleaming white pen manifested on his fingers, and he wrote his full name at the bottom, next to Shia's full name. The instant the last letter was written, all the sentences seemed to have come to life as they shimmered brightly for a few moments. Then the paper burned from bottom to top, turning into 2 clouds of ash. As everyone's eyes were affixed on the 2 clouds, each person had a different expression. Jamal and Sergio were surprised the deal actually went through. Shia and Blader had similar wide, excited grins. Arthur looked like his soul was snatched out of his body. His face was as pale as sheet paper. Meanwhile, Levi still maintained the same gentle smile like he hadn't just signed his life away. At last, Ashcrawl, as he watched those 2 clouds solidify into 2 spiritual seals and slowly move towards Shia and Levi, he couldn't help but finally drop the act. Ha 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 ha, you little brat, you actually signed it. I should have known that you had it in you. Mad, absolutely mad. Ashcrawl laughed, amused by the whole situation. Levi heard him and didn't bother to respond, focusing on the seal being stamped on his soul. When it happened, he felt a simple chill that lasted less than a split second. The contract has been approved. Shia asked while rubbing her hands in anticipation. Now tell me, what should we do to achieve perfect evolution to Tier 3? As you said before, a risk has to be taken to move forward. I applaud your efforts. You have gained my attention. Ashcrawl shared, now, tell her that her contracted Nightcrawler needs to find the variant of blood crystal flower called obsidian bloodvine and ground it with the blood crystal flower's stem while using, before he could finish giving out the secret recipe to create a perfect evolutionary formula, knowledge worth millions of lumen credits, Levi's solemn voice resounded in the room. I will need you to bring me 5 blood crystal flowers, obsidian bloodvine, and a piece of ruby veil blossom. In addition, I will be requiring all the secondary materials for the remarkable evolution. 5 flowers, obsidian bloodvine, and even the infamous ruby veil blossom. As expected, perfect evolutions aren't cheap. Jamal sucked in a cold breath, knowing that a single ruby veil blossom cost 500,000 lumens. While money can solve ruby veil blossom, it will be quite tough to secure 5 flowers at once, plus their variant obsidian bloodvine. Shia frowned. I heard there is only a 10% chance for such a variant to emerge. Neither she nor her partners questioned Levi's information as they knew that the moment he signed the contract, there was no way he would try to fool them. After all, if Bleeder's evolution failed, his life would no longer be his. As for asking him about the details, it was written in the contract that Levi wasn't obligated to share his method with them. This was quite a normal procedure since this kind of vital information was sold for millions of lumens to the right target. Shia wasn't the sole daywalker with a contracted Nightcrawler of Bleeder's species. All right, at least we have a goal now. Shia clapped her thighs and stood up with an invigorated look. She looked at her partners and said, we might require more manpower to collect 5 blood flowers. Sergio, go out and hire 4 rookie daywalkers at Stage 3 or Junior daywalkers. The payment is 20,000 lumens for each blood crystal flower harvested and 100,000 for obsidian bloodvine. Arthur raised an eyebrow in surprise, realizing that Shia might be from quite a well-off family. After all, there was no way a junior daywalker at evolution stage would have this much money to throw away. On it, Sergio took off immediately. Jamal, I need you to reach out to the Anti-Sleepwalker Bureau and request a temporary lift on Levi's ankle monitor. Huh? Don't tell me you want to bring him with us, Jamal was alarmed. Of course, he isn't leaving my sight until we conclude the deal. Shia winked in the direction of Levi, forgetting that he couldn't see. Fine by me. Levi smiled. If he is going, I am going. Arthur interjected with a cold gaze. Why not? You seem to have a bright prospect of becoming a high-ranked daywalker. It will be a good experience for you. Shia welcomed him too, knowing that while the harrowing forest might have some surviving Nightcrawlers of the fallen Shadow Castle, it wouldn't be much of a threat to their party. Let's go. Next, she nodded at her partner and walked to the door. When she was about to leave, she turned around and showed a gentle smile. For your own sake, I genuinely hope this works out. While her smile was gentle, her tone carried a hint of bloodthirsty intent, making Arthur's heart skip a beat. Don't go nowhere, we move at dawn. The door was closed, leaving Arthur and Levi in the chamber. Before Arthur could say anything, Ashcroll asked, What are you doing? Showing you how serious I am. If I were to give them the correct formula, the deal would go through and I would get my recommendation letter. Levi replied calmly while standing up. As I said before, there is no point in participating in the assembly if you were the only Nightcrawler interested in me, so I am getting my contract on my own terms, right here, right now. Hearing this, both Arthur and Ashcroll were left silent, staring at Levi's expressionless face. Even Arthur was thrown off by his big brother's unbreakable stubbornness to get his way regardless of the consequences, even if it meant walking straight to a life of enslavement. That's what Arthur thought, but in reality, every action Levi made was a calculated move, no matter how crazy it seemed. While I do appreciate your resolve, it's not enough to convince me of linking my legacy, my life, my everything to a blind child, Ashcroll said calmly. I understand this isn't a simple decision for Nightcrawlers. Levi replied, once you sign the contract, you return to a Tier 1 Nightcrawler, immortal, and most importantly, you lose your autonomy until the duration of the contract ends. Committing to a blind human is even worse. But that's the thing. Levi smiled faintly. You're different. You chose me specifically because I am blind. I don't know why, but I know damn well that my blindness is an advantageous condition for you. Correct me if I am wrong. After he heard all of this, Ashcroll couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. This boy, he didn't lie, his observation and analytic skills are superb, he thought to himself as he narrowed his slit in the direction of Levi. He has been studying me for years, just as I have been doing to him. He only made his move once he was confident in his analysis. Although he hasn't hit the nail on the head, his intelligence and cunningness are unquestionable. Ashcroll thought to himself, maybe it's about time I commit. I have tested him for long enough. He might be the one. But soon Ashcroll shook his head, knowing that it wasn't the time yet. He has yet to be tested in the real world. He smiled sinisterly as he gazed into the distance, seemingly noticing something strange. Let's see how he fares in the forest. Chapter 8, The Holy Pillars. Half a day later, Levi and Arthur were seen sitting in front of the motel's room, awaiting the return of Shia's squad and any sort of movement from Ashcroll. Unfortunately, he hadn't reached out since the last time Levi spoke to him. While Levi seemed at peace with how the situation was developing, Arthur was getting antsy by the minute. Levi, you should have at least listened to the formula for Bleeder's perfect evolution. Arthur bit his nails nervously. It's been half a day already. Maybe he has already lost interest. Nightcrawlers are extremely unpredictable. Loosen up. Don't get yourself early wrinkles. Levi smiled peacefully. He will come around eventually. If not, well, it's not so bad to work as Daywalker's staff. Can you stop joking around? Arthur glared at his brother. Arthur always respected his brother's decisions and plans, believing that he had it covered every time. But this situation was simply too extreme, as Levi was putting his life in the hands of a Nightcrawler. Arthur could never trust a Nightcrawler, especially when their parents were slaughtered under their hands. Too bad, all he could do was wait patiently, a virtue he always lacked. Is it sunset already? Levi asked after Astra Eye informed him of the time. I guess so. The holy pillars are about to emerge, Arthur replied as he turned around and watched the sun slowly set over the horizon. As this was happening, the entire outpost came to a brief halt. Every daywalker and citizen stopped whatever they were doing and lifted their heads, gazing at the breathtaking sunset. Some seemed to appreciate the view, while the majority had looks of abandonment, wishing that the sun would never set. Sadly, the sun disappeared on the horizon and took away its precious, protective light. But soon everyone's gloomy expressions were replaced with looks of relief as a wave of gentle, luminous golden light started sparkling around them. It was like the entire outpost was illuminated by a gentle flashlight from the heavens, putting their hearts and minds at ease. Have no fear, the solar deities will never forsake us. Orin. One daywalker fell to his knees and bowed his head towards the heart of the holy Heliodor region. He was holding tightly to a necklace with an illuminating sun symbol. His face reflected nothing but utter devotion and reverence. Some daywalkers reacted in the same manner, and some merely nodded in appreciation towards the sky. Then they continued with their duties or preparation for exploring the harrowing forest. Their reaction was understandable when the sole reason humanity hadn't gone extinct 100 years ago was due to those holy light pillars. After the first contact with the shadow dimension, Nightcrawlers had invaded Earth from every patch of darkness through Stygian gates. In the first 12 hours, more than 3 billion people were either devoured or forced to become sleepwalkers for the sake of survival. Just when hope seemed lost and humanity's extinction was merely a few days away, 1,000 holy light pillars fell from the sky on major cities worldwide. The chosen cities had the most surviving population from the first invasion. Each pillar covered 300 kilometers in diameter, illuminating entire cities and the nearest regions to them. The moment the pillars descended, all Nightcrawlers were scorched to death instantly in those cities and their underground, giving the survivors a safe haven at last. At the moment, there were no longer any countries after the old system fell apart, only holy regions in infested continents. How warm! Meanwhile, Levi seemed to enjoy the divine light as he gently moved his palm across the illuminating sparkles. While he couldn't see them, he had a peculiar feeling of comfort, like he was being hugged by his mother. He had already asked his brother about it, and he told him that he had never felt the same sensation, and so has the others. This made Levi assume that maybe the solar deities were gentle with blind people, making him appreciate the warm sensation each night. Enjoying your sunbath under the holy light? Suddenly, Shia's irritated voice resounded from behind Arthur and Levi. When Arthur turned around, he noticed that neither her expression nor her partner's was good. You seemed distressed. Were there any issues with the recruitment? Levi inquired calmly. How did you know? Shia knitted her eyebrows in wonder. You took quite a while to return, which shouldn't be possible when the payment is quite generous on your part. Levi smiled serenely. I assumed that most reliable rogue daywalkers were already signed to other agencies' squads. Your guess is half right. Shia sat down next to them and disclosed with an irked look. It's Mantis, the fucker from Sunstrike Agency. It turns out they have already capitalized on their agency's main squad success at clearing the Shadow Castle. The bastard has signed 99% of the current daywalkers in the outpost. Sergio cursed. We were even approached by them. Jamal sighed helplessly. What's your next move? Levi inquired as he rested his arms on his white cane. Are you planning to wait until your agency's members arrive? No, we will move now. Shia uttered sternly. My agency associates will take days to arrive, as most of them are carrying their missions. With Sunstrike's current numbers, they will most definitely lock down the entire forest once they make their move. Are you mad? Arthur narrowed his eyes. It was already dangerous for us with extra members involved. How can you guarantee my brother's safety with just you three? Don't worry, Arthur. Levi answered him. She can't afford to lose me just yet. Aren't you a bit too sensible for your age? Shia leaned closer to Levi. Then she whispered, I am growing quite fond of you. Please don't disappoint me. Levi merely smiled in response, not bothering to turn his head. A few minutes later, Shia, Levi, Arthur, and the other two were seen walking towards the outpost's exit. To no one's surprise, the exit was extremely populated with contracted Nightcrawlers, awaiting Sunstrike Agency's orders to move out into the forest. With such a gathering, it was difficult for Levi to tune out all the noises. The hell? What's a blind kid doing here? Boy, have you lost your way? Shishishi, it's best to go back, lest your ankle monitor gets you in trouble. Levi walked unaffected amidst the mockery. By now he was immune to their ridicule, as he had heard practically everything. However, his unique situation attracted their partner's attention, making almost everyone turn their heads and gaze at them. Oh, is that Shia Morningstar? Was she also recruited for this mission? Huh? Don't be delusional. Her family's fortune is enough to buy all of us. What is she doing with a blind kid? Is he even allowed to leave the borders? As Shia's squad walked across the crowded exit, murmurs were heard here and there. Although there were close to 100 daywalkers, Shia kept her hands inside her buggy jacket, walking with a straight back and a popsicle in her mouth. The crowd opened a path for them without her needing to say anything. Damn, is she really that famous? Arthur muttered under his breath as he kept looking at the daywalkers' expressions. Most of them were either envious or starstruck, like they were gazing at an actual celebrity. Levi heard his brother's murmurs through the noise and answered him casually. She is quite famous, but their reactions are for her father. Her father? Yes. Levi shared, she is the youngest daughter of Idris Morningstar, the current head of the Morningstar lineage family and the Blood Hunters Agency. Blood Hunters Agency? Arthur scratched his head in confusion. It can't be. There is only one Blood Hunters Agency in our holy region. It's a Tier 5 agent, huh? Arthur suddenly felt a chill course down his spine after realizing that his big brother wasn't screwing around with just any daywalker, but the precious daughter of one of the strongest daywalkers and the leader of the second-ranked agency in Heliodor's region. With a petrified expression, Arthur looked below him at his brother and saw that he still had the same serene, harmless smile. When did you find out? Once I knew her name. Levi answered while tapping his hearing device, letting him know that he used the Astra AI to search for her name on the network. You still committed? Arthur sighed helplessly. Brother, couldn't you have picked any other daywalker? Arthur's worry was rational as he heard many negative rumors related to the Blood Hunters Agency. The most well-known one, they were absolutely batshit crazy. Have no fear, your big bro is here, Levi joked. Fuck off. Arthur massaged his temples, feeling like he was losing years of his life trying to keep up with his brother. Welcome back, Shia. Have you given my proposal a second thought? Chapter 9, Sealing Totems. Suddenly, a feminine soft voice echoed across the gathering, silencing the noise almost immediately. Shia lifted her head lazily and noticed a tall, thin man wearing a skin-tight black and green protective suit. He had long braided pistachio green hair that reached his waist, making Shia click her tongue in annoyance each time she saw it. Mantis, haven't I warned you not to get in my face again if you don't want your precious hair sliced? Shulda intoned with a hint of jealousy. A sweat dropped down Mantis's forehead as he stared at her serious expression. He heard rumors that the Idris Morningstar was forcing his entire family to keep their hair at a neck's length maximum, females or males. It had to do with long hair being detrimental in combat. It seemed like Shia wasn't a fan of this family rule. If it wasn't for their deal, Shia would have given Arthur some bad looks too, due to his ponytail. Ha 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 ha, Shia. No need to be so aggressive. Mantis released a nervous laugh and then tried to win her over again. We are going to move at dawn after we add another batch of daywalkers. Please feel free to tag along with us. No contract is required, and I will assure you that the first blood crystal flower we find goes to you. No payment needed. He smiled welcomingly. What do you say? Isn't this the same as making us work for her evolution free of charge? Tisk, life truly isn't fair. The rest of the daywalkers showed envious and slightly bothered looks at Mantis's special treatment of Shia, but they kept their complaints within the confines of their minds, understanding that they weren't at Shia's level of reputation. Not interested. Yet to everyone's surprise, Shia didn't even bother to stop. She moved past him while Jamal and Sergio were giving him a dirty look. She only stopped when she arrived at the closed-shut solid metallic gate, guarded by two governmental daywalkers. One looked bored as hell, smoking a thin cigarette and hiding his face under a hat, while the other had an energetic attitude. The smoker leaned lazily, glancing at Levi behind a pair of thin black sunglasses. Then he ordered him to come close and show his ankle monitor. Arthur brought his brother to the guard and helped him lift his trousers, exposing his ankle monitor. As Arthur looked around and noticed the weird looks his brother was being given, his veins popped up and his expression turned menacing. Don. Just as he was about to tell them off, Shahir turned around and uttered coldly, "Mind your fucking business before I rip your eyes off." Almost everyone turned their attention somewhere else, knowing that the Blood Hunters agency was filled with monsters who couldn't care less about their reputation. In other words, antagonizing the precious daughter of the leader wasn't a smart move as they were unpredictable. Arthur eased up a bit and gave Shia an appreciative nod. Shia ignored him and focused on the guards. Uncaring about the ongoing drama, the smoker daywalker glanced once at the ankle monitor and scanned it fully with his neuralens. A hologram manifested in front of him, giving him all the officially recorded details of Levi. Name: Levi Ignis Larson, age 17, gender male. Background: Levi Larson grew up in the shadow of tragedy. Both of his parents were slaughtered at the hands of two mysterious Nightcrawlers. They also ripped his eyes out and left him to turn into a sleepwalker. The signature move of the infamous Duskbound Order. Parental situation: father, Brian Larson, the founder of Larson's Nightwear Company. Deceased: mother, Rukia Altimur. No noteworthy information found. Deceased. Current status: Levi Larson has been under city arrest for 5 years, which was later on upgraded to a regional arrest after succeeding in all his yearly forensic psychological evaluations. Danger level: low. Ankle monitor status: temporarily lift, 15 days. Current guardian: Shia Chima Morningstar. After he finished, he looked up at Levi and murmured to himself, "He sure has grown." Levi's ears twitched, hearing his whisper. Taken by surprise, he scrutinized the humanoid-grade aura of the guard, trying to see if he had met him somewhere. Unfortunately, there weren't many details in a foggy, featureless aura. "He checks out." The smoker daywalker waved his hand lazily and lowered his hat, hiding half of his face while leaning against his chair. His partner swiftly opened the gate for them after checking the eyes of Shia and the others. Ka-thump! The metallic gate let out a thunderous noise, echoing across the silent, harrowing forest in the distance. "Please be careful. There are still many remnants of the fallen Shadow Castle hiding underground." The energetic guard saluted them by placing 3 fingers on his chest. Shia, Sergio, Jamal, and even Arthur saluted back in the same fashion. Then they walked outside of the outpost, standing amidst an empty field of dirt and rocks. There wasn't even a path towards the forest. It was like they were thrown completely into the wilderness. Ka-thump! The guard closed the gate behind them, following protocol. Since the Holy Region borders were defined by the range of the Holy Pillar, those outposts were considered the first line of defense for each region. Thus, daywalkers could leave their regions at any given moment and explore the wastelands, but they had to do it at their own risk. "The outside world doesn't feel as dangerous as I anticipated," Arthur said as he looked around him. "We are still under the Sun Disk Tower illumination. Let's see if you will say the same when your only source of light is the moon, stars, and your equipment." Sergio snickered. As he mentioned, the tall Sun Disk Tower didn't act as a mere weapon against the Nightcrawlers' encroachment, but also as a lighthouse at night. Right now, it was focusing its light in the direction of the forest, illuminating the entire path towards it. Unfortunately, the forest was outside of its range. "Enough chit-chat. We have 10 hours at best before dawn. We must reach the depth of the forest before Mantis' group moves out." Shia ordered calmly, "Bring out your night mounts." All 3 reached out to a backpack on their right wrist and pulled out a small wooden totem, each one with a different shape and peculiar inscriptions written on it. Shia had an eagle-like totem, Sergio possessed a wolf-like totem, and Jamal held onto a horse-like totem. All 3 closed their eyes and murmured different incantations with strange-sounding language while holding the totem in one hand. The moment the incantation was finished, the 3 blood hunters threw the totems in front of them. Then everyone watched as a mysterious light descended on the totems from the heavens, illuminating the fine inscriptions written on their surfaces. After the inscriptions were fully illuminated, The totems grew in size bit by bit until they were bigger than Shia's party. Then, the wooden totems shattered, revealing 3 monstrous Tier 1 Nightcrawlers. When exposed to the physical world, the shadowy horse and blue-furred wolf Nightcrawlers growled viciously at the party. The wolf even tried to lung at Arthur with bloodthirsty eyes and saliva dripping down its vicious mouth. "Are you easy, boy, easy?" Sergio pulled into a chain of light, which was linked to a spiky collar on the Nightcrawler's neck. After a couple of tugs, the blue-haired wolf finally started behaving properly as each tug released a painful burning sensation on the collar. "You still haven't tamed them?" Shia gave them a look of dissatisfaction while patting the wings of her eagle, which was lowering its head in obedience, though everyone could see the hint of dread in the eagle's eyes, making them understand that it wasn't listening to Shia out of love. "We are trying our best. The fuckers are too rebellious." Jamal cursed as he kept pulling into a similar light chain, forcing the shadowy horse to behave. "I know a trick that might make it easier for you guys to tame them," Levi interjected softly. "What do you know about taming night mounts?" Sergio glared. "Quite a bit." Levi walked towards Sergio using his cane. Then he extended his hand in front and requested, "May I get some luminous snacks?" Shia gave a head nod to Sergio, making him reach out to his backpack and pull 3 small orbs, the size of marbles. Then he handed them to Levi with an annoyed look. "You better not waste them. I am running low on stock." Levi merely smiled in response while walking slowly toward the giant blue-furred wolf. Since the wolf was in the real world, it appeared as a wolfish blue aura in Levi's eyes. Still, Levi could sense that its aggression was growing with each step he got closer to it. My late mother's hobby was learning about Nightcrawlers in general. Archetypes, evolutionary paths, rarities, behavior, and the rest of their seemingly infinite peculiar qualities. Levi shared softly while placing 1 luminous snack on his palm. Then he pressed it, and it started shimmering with purified stored sunlight. The moment the 3 Nightcrawlers noticed the light, their hunger took over their minds. Even Shia's mount showed hints of wanting to pounce on the snack, but one cold glare from Shia made it reconsider. Grrr. Meanwhile, Jamal and Sergio were forced to tightly hold onto the light chains, keeping their night mounts controlled. When studying Tier 1 Nightcrawlers, she found out that besides their insatiable hunger for light and their low intelligence, they reacted excessively to another thing. Levi brought the luminous snack right next to the blue-furred wolf's mouth and kept it at a short distance, forcing it to try its best to eat the snack, but to no avail. "Sit," he ordered with the same serene smile. The wolf completely ignored his order, its eyes still affixed on nothing but the snack. "Sit," still no response. Seeing this, Sergio had already lost his patience and commented with an irked tone, "Shia, are you really going to let him waste more of our time?" Shia shushed him with a finger near her mouth. "Sit." After Levi repeated the order 3 times and the wolf failed to heed it, he brought the luminous snack right in front of its eyes. Then he tightened his palm until the orb exploded, releasing a short-lived flash. Chapter 10. I will be gentle. Next time. Shia, Sergio, Jamal, Bleeder, and the rest of the contracted Nightcrawlers were left stunned for a moment. Even the mounts went quiet, their eyes widening as they gazed at Levi. Calm and collected, Levi took a step back. A second after the purified sunlight died out, "Hell broke loose. Grr. Cow! Nay!" The 3 mounts roared, losing their marbles immediately. "You bastard! Are you screwing with us?" Sergio cursed as he tried his best to calm down the agitated wolf. "What's the meaning of this?" Shia questioned. She still had faith in Levi, knowing that he wasn't foolish to create such a mess without a result. "Be patient." Levi pulled another luminous snack and brought it close to the agitated wolf. It was walking in circles in its place, but its vicious eyes never left Levi. After noticing the snack, its viciousness died out immediately and started trying to eat it again. "Sit," Levi commanded calmly. Seeing that it still refused to follow his commands, Levi didn't hesitate to blow off the orb, causing the Nightcrawlers to snap again. Without waiting for anyone to interfere, Levi brought out the last luminous snack and commanded coldly, "Sit." Under everyone's shocked expressions, the blue-furred wolf sat down on all 4 paws immediately while whimpering softly, seemingly begging Levi to stop wasting purified sunlight. Yet, what shocked them the most was the sight of the shadowy horse and the white feathered eagle also sitting down, even when they weren't being addressed. Good boy. Levi smiled kindly and fed the snack to the wolf while slowly caressing its fur. Then he suggested that Shia and Jamal feed their Nightcrawlers too, so they would associate listening to commands got them snacks, and refusing to abide would result in their destruction. Shia and Jamal did as they were told and watched as their mounts became much more respectful of their presence. Shia looked at Levi in intrigue and asked only one question. How? Because my brother is the best at anything he touches. Arthur grinned proudly. I wish that was true. Levi chuckled. The truth is, after thorough research, my mother discovered that Tier 1 Nightcrawlers react just as intensely to wasting purified sunlight as they do to consuming it. So I figured you could use it as a trick to make your mounts obedient if the pain of the divine chains wasn't enough. Shia and her party were left astounded. How is this the first time I'm hearing about this? Shia raised an eyebrow in surprise. Because knowledge is wealth in this era, Levi replied. While he knew that his mother's intelligence was on the high end after reading through all the research papers, he wasn't delusional enough to believe that she was the first and only person to find out such information. In other words, this kind of knowledge was either kept on the low or sold to interested parties, following the same approach of evolution-related knowledge. Shia and her party figured out what Levi meant instantly, leaving them a bit puzzled. Why haven't you sold it? Sergio frowned. I believe such a taming technique would have fetched you a reasonable amount of credits. Neither of you seems like the type to have money. Jamal doubled down as he scanned Levi and Arthur's clothes. Money? Levi added sincerely. I shared a piece of my mother's knowledge with you simply because it would have helped you. Not everything needs to be sold. If one doesn't know where to draw the line, it won't be long before he finds himself selling his soul. Shia and the others were left a bit astounded to hear such matured wisdom come out of the lips of a teenager. Helped us? Sergio narrowed his eyes at Levi while talking telepathically with his contracted Nightcrawler. Othniel, are his motives truly that pure? The Rocky Hog replied calmly, I am not sure. The boy is nearly impossible to read with his soulless gaze. Sometime later, Levi was seen sitting on top of the white-feathered eagle, holding on to Shia's waist tightly. He had a big smile as he enjoyed the wind caressing his face. Meanwhile, Arthur was left to sit on the shadowy horse behind Jamal. His experience wasn't as enjoyable. Arthur yelped in pain with each gallop, feeling like his balls were being crushed. Neither Jamal nor the horse was enjoying their time without a saddle. Arthur weighed more than 140 kilograms of pure muscle, an absolute genetic anomaly. How is it even humanly possible to get this big at 16 without being a daywalker? Did he take steroids? Is it even enough? Jamal murmured as he gazed at Arthur's gigantic hands holding onto his waist, feeling a bit of dread creeping up on him each time Arthur tightened his hands. Although he was a daywalker, he was still a mere junior. In addition, he was of psychic specialization, meaning his contracted Nightcrawler was geared towards mostly mental-based battles. This resulted in his body and physical strength being quite weak. He was much weaker than Arthur physically. Suddenly, the shadowy horse jumped over a small boulder on its path and snatched Arthur's soul with it. Instinctively, Arthur hugged Jamal tightly, feeling like he would get thrown off the horse. Ugh, I can't breath. With eyes popping out of their sockets and a face as pale as a sheet of paper, Jamal kept tapping on Arthur's forearm while trying his best to catch his breath. Let go, you are choking him. Sergio came to his rescue, scolding Arthur loudly on top of his wolf. So sorry. I lost control for a bit. Arthur apologized with a foolish smile after relaxing his grip, leaving Jamal to cough uncontrollably. Ha ha ha. You almost got had by a civilian. A child even. Ha ha. Meanwhile, his contracted Nightcrawler Oro was laughing at him, uncaring about upsetting his partner even more. Almost all intelligent Nightcrawlers were assholes. It didn't matter if they were contracted or not. They would never miss a chance to bully someone. You get down. Ashamed and a bit terrified, Jamal immediately stopped the shadowy horse and pulled Arthur down. "Sergio, it's your turn." Before Jamal could pass on the ticking time bomb, Sergio flew past him at great speed, kicking off a cloud of dust. This left Jamal, Arthur, and the shadowy horse to stare at each other in awkward silence. A few seconds later, Arthur coughed, "I will be gentle next time." The way he worded it pissed Jamal even more. "Trust me, I promise I won't go hard." Arthur doubled down with an innocent look. Just shut up and ride the damn horse." An hour later, Shia, Levi, and Sergio were seen standing at the gates of the harrowing forest with their backs facing it. As they were talking with each other, a tiny black horse appeared over the horizon, galloping at full speed in their direction. "About damn time," Shia grumbled, as she was waiting for over 10 minutes now. Soon her irritation died down and was replaced with an amused look at Arthur sitting in front, while Jamal hugged him in the back. Since Arthur was built like a tank and Jamal looked like a tall stick, only his arms were visible. Under the dreadful silence of the night, Arthur and Jamal's distressed voices echoed from a distance. "Stop the horse!" "I don't know how." "Pull its hair." Arthur used too much force, ripping a handful of hair, causing the shadowy horse to yelp in pain and stop mid-sprint. Just like they had pulled the front brakes of a bike, Arthur and Jamal were sent flying in the direction of the main party. "What in the—" Shia facepalmed as she watched those two idiots hugging each other in midair, pure dread taking hold of their expressions. "Mika, catch them." Cree, the white-feathered eagle, took off immediately and caught them with its talons a couple of meters before they got smacked by the ground. Then it brought them back to the party, dropping them off near Shia's feet. "I swear if you guys leave with him again, I will beat him up." Jamal stood up, steam practically pouring from his ears. Everyone's teasing looks didn't make him feel any better about such a humiliating experience. "Is he always this feisty?" Oblivious, Arthur asked while dusting his ass. "That's the thing. He is usually the silent one." Shia chuckled as she watched Jamal put his night mount back inside another ceiling totem. Then he took off towards the forest on his own, having no interest in talking about what happened. After sealing their night mounts, Shia and the others chased after Jamal. The moment they went inside, a sudden chilly wind blew past them, sounding akin to a harrowing scream of a child. Chapter 11, The Harrowing Forest. "Is this why it's called the Harrowing Forest?" Arthur inquired, still not scared. "It used to be called Forest Bniabid before the fall of civilization. Levi educated his little brother. After the Shadow Castle took over, the forest was altered over time by the seeping corruption of the Shadow Dimension. The first brave pioneers renamed it to the Harrowing Forest after hearing the noise and believing that the wind wasn't producing it, but it was the cries of captured souls within the Shadow Dimension." "Well, looks like the second part was a load of crap," Arthur chuckled, listening to the non-stop windy cries. He knew that with the destruction of the Shadow Castle, the permanent link to the Shadow Dimension was gone for good. Sure, some Stygian gates would be opened here and there, but they would be used only by mindless Tier 1 or Tier 2 Nightcrawlers. The intelligent Tier 3 Nightcrawlers and above were either already eliminated with the Shadow Castle or escaped to another region. In other words, the week after clearing those Shadow Castles and higher-ranked Nightcrawlers' nests was always the safest for daywalkers to explore. Still, it was never a bad idea to be safe. "Activate your nightwear strips," Shavai ordered, after noticing the weakening of moonlight as they went deeper into the forest. The forest's trees were mostly cork oaks, known for their thick and rugged bark. However, when there were too many of them, their size could cover the sky, allowing darkness to reign. Shia, Jamal, and Sergio pulled out thin white stripes and placed them on their arms, thighs, back, and chest. Then, she offered a few strips to Levi and Arthur. "You know how to use them?" she asked. "How couldn't we?" Levi smiled bitterly as he moved his fingers across the thin, smooth white stripes. "What is that supposed to mean?" Shia frowned. "It's nothing." Levi kept quiet as he covered his body with the stripes, using his brother's help in areas he couldn't reach. Seeing that both of them were ready, Shia dropped the subject, knowing that it wasn't time for a useless chit-chat. "Astra, activate nightwear stripes." In a matter of seconds, all the used nightwear stripes were turned on under Shia's order, illuminating at least 10 meters around the party. The best part? The light was gentle on the eyes as each stripe contained thousands of tiny, energy-efficient LEDs capable of emitting controlled light outwards. However, the light was still artificial, which meant it was harmless to the Nightcrawlers and was used specifically for constant, cheap illumination. With decent light on their side, the party carried on their exploration, making sure to check every tree, boulder, and hole. Why are we searching here? Isn't it much more efficient to reach the forest's depths first? Arthur wondered. Most of the blood crystal flowers and other natural treasures must have already been collected by Sunstrike Agency's main squad at the depths. Shia answered, but none of them will bother wasting their precious time searching the entire forest for the rest. That's why Mantis has bought most daywalkers over, wanting to clear out the entire forest. Jamal added while flipping a boulder over. In simpler terms, we might get lucky in the outer circle. I see. Arthur nodded in understanding while getting his hands dirty too. Levi was the only one not doing much work. He was left to sit on a fallen trunk, holding onto his white cane on his lap. Not even Sergio dared to go as low as asking a blind kid to help them search for the flowers. After spending a few minutes clearing an area, the party packed up and moved to another area. Then they repeated the process. In this manner, they were going deeper into the forest while making sure to explore as much surface area as possible. How is it this quiet? Levi knitted his eyebrows as he kept looking around him. He expected to spot a couple of Tier 1 Nightcrawlers roaming the forest, but nothing appeared in his spiritual sight. Only darkness and his party's Nightcrawlers, who were chilling with him. It is a bit strange, Bleeder interjected. Maybe the Sunstrike Agency has completely wiped out the nest, not sparing even the low-tiered Nightcrawlers? Maybe. The fatty has told me that the Sunstrike Agency has chosen to play a death game to reclaim the territory. Othniel shared calmly, we all know this approach almost always results in the elimination of 99% of them as per the nocturnal contract terms. Oh, I didn't know they chose a death game. Levi raised an eyebrow in surprise. No wonder the forest seems barely touched by their conquest. The news shared publicly wasn't always complete since journalists and reporters couldn't go out and bring the actual news live. This meant the news was heavily dependent on what the agencies or the government wanted to share. Of course, this affected the public mostly as those agencies were forced by law to give a thorough report of their expeditions to the authorities. This resulted in pieces of the news being shared amongst the upper echelons and daywalkers, allowing even Shia's party to hear rumors. Looks like we spoke too soon, Levi suddenly said while gazing at 10 approaching green auras from every direction. The auras resembled double-headed green hogs with 2 long horns in the center of their back. I see nothing? Bleeder frowned. Are you imagining stuff? They are approaching from all sides in the real world, Levi clarified. Wait, you can see Nightcrawlers in the real world? Bleeder's eyes widened in shock. Yes, they appear as spiritual auras. Levi replied calmly, but is this really the time to be talking about this? They are getting closer. Bleeder, Oro, and Othniel glanced at each other in confusion for a second before they nodded at each other and swiftly returned to their partners. We might have company. As Shia and the others heard their contracted Nightcrawlers' warning, they immediately summoned them as signature weapons and entered a small formation around Levi and Arthur. What's going on? Arthur's expression turned solemn. Shia shushed him with a finger while glancing at Jamal, who was holding onto a psionic bow, which was covered in hardened green scales. The bow had no arrows or a string. Yet Jamal closed his eyes and aimed at the top. As his concentration reached its zenith, a spiritual misty string manifested on the bow, allowing Jamal to hold on to it and pull it to the limit. Arthur watched in utter fascination as an amber-colored arrow seemed to flicker between reality and illusion emerged in the center of the bow. Before he could react, Jamal released the arrow into the sky. With his eyes closed and 2 fingers placed on his right temple, Jamal started controlling the arrow freely, seeing exactly what the arrow was seeing. It was like he had an ancient GoPro strapped on the arrow, allowing him to turn it into a controllable drone. The arrow kept piercing through trees and boulders without its speed weakening at all, as it was created out of Jamal's spiritual energy. After making a swift scan around them, he spotted 10 peculiar horns protruding from the dirt while slowly edging closer. It's dirt-eater hogs. I have spotted 10, but there might be more. The closest one is 20 meters away from us. Jamal informed them after canceling his scanning ability. Then he raised an eyebrow in astonishment, knowing that it should have been impossible for their contracted nightcrawlers to spot them from this distance, especially when the dirt-eater hogs were known to move 2 meters underground, exposing only their horns, which were hollow and used for breathing. But he knew that it wasn't time for such questions. "Good job," Shia nodded while entering a battle stance. "Leave them to me. Keep the brothers safe." Chapter 12, Upgraded Spiritual Vision. Hearing that they had company, Arthur immediately stood in front of Levi while holding on to a giant thick log. It must weigh at least 50 kilograms, yet Arthur was holding it akin to a great sword. Levi couldn't see what was going on, but he had the assistance of his eye as she was narrating everything. He used his rich imagination to fill in the rest of the details. "I can smell them. I can smell their blood. They are close." Meanwhile, Shia followed the foreign smell of their blood until she stood at exactly the center of their ambush, redirecting their attention to her solely. It was in a small space filled with dead leaves and tiny rocks, cornered by 4 oak trees. Shia closed her eyes and controlled her breath while holding on to the pole of her crimson crescent-bladed glaive. After a few moments of harrowing, windy cries, the dead leaves started jumping all over the place as tremors took over the space. Then, from the depths of darkness, 10 giant, double-headed hogs emerged with pure viciousness in their eyes as they charged toward Shia. Oink, oink, oink. Saliva was pouring out of their mouths, tainting their long, sharp fangs. Their eyes were pitch black, reflecting the shimmering Shia, akin to a delicious snack. They knocked down trees in their path, creating a loud disturbance in the entire forest. In front of humans, the light, plants absorbed, meant absolutely nothing to nightcrawlers, even if they were low-tiered and non-intelligent. Seeing this overwhelming sight, Arthur couldn't help but gulp a mouthful in dread. Just as he was about to wonder if it was fine to leave Shia alone, she made her move. Mantra Blood Arts, Blood Ring of Damnation. She murmured calmly as she started swinging the glaive rapidly once the hogs stepped inside the circle of light produced by her nightwear stripes. Slice, slice, slice. The crescent blade flew out of the pole, spinning extremely fast as it sliced the charging hogs, the flying leaves, rocks, and whatever was inside the circle of illumination. Just like a spot dancer, Shia moved only her arm as she kept swinging the detached pole, taking a mere step back and forth. "How is she controlling the crescent blade?" Arthur exclaimed in astonishment as he watched the terrifying spinning crescent blade cut through the hogs with minimum resistance. "There is a string of sticky blood connecting the pole with the crescent blade," Sergio shared with a faint smirk. Arthur squinted at Shia's pole, wanting to see the string of blood, but to no avail. The flying blood of the hogs was congealing in midair and following the trajectory of the crimson crescent, making it extremely difficult to see anything else. In less than a few seconds, the dying squeals of the hogs were no longer heard. Only the whooshing air of Shia's crescent blade spinning around the 10-meter radius, creating a perfect ring of blood with the sliced-up corpses of the hogs. Bon appetit! Bleeder's terrifying mouth manifested on the crescent blade, and it started sucking off the long serpentine blood, sparing not a single drop. After he was done, he burped loudly and Shia summoned him back. Then she returned to the squad and said, "Collect their crystallized seeds quickly. The noise must have attracted other nightcrawlers." "Good work." Brutal as always. Jamal and Sergio patted her on the shoulder and swiftly went to the crime scene. "You should go with them to learn how to extract crystallized seeds," Shia addressed Arthur. Arthur glanced at his brother for a moment and then looked at Shia. After recalling what she had just done to those hogs, he knew he was leaving his brother in safe hands. "Be right back." He threw the massive log away and then worked on the corpses with Sergio and Jamal, who started teaching him the most efficient ways to extract crystallized seeds. Once an owner of a Shadow Life seed dies, his seed get crystallized into a somewhat blue gem. Those crystallized seeds were everything to Daywalkers since they were traded for Solar Aegis coins, which was the main currency for Daywalkers' related markets. Shia reached out inside her pocket and pulled out 2 covered lollipops. She placed one in Levi's palm, and he shook his head politely. "No thank you, I am on a sugar-free diet." Sugar-free? How boring is that? Shia shrugged her shoulders. Suit yourself. Cool attack you have there. Levi inquired in intrigue. Is it an innate ability or a learned technique? It's learned, Shia shared with a lollipop in her mouth. You learned such a powerful ability while being a junior daywalker? Levi was surprised. Although Levi's source of information was his eye, and he didn't really see the full extent of Shia's ability, he knew it was extremely powerful. After all, a junior daywalker shouldn't be able to take down 10 Tier 1 Nightcrawlers in a few seconds without using an innate ability. He understood that becoming a daywalker was quite easy, but what truly separated a genius from a mediocre was his resistance, attunement to light, and his teachability. Most rookie and junior daywalkers relied on their innate abilities, which were easily unlocked after passing each stage. On the other hand, techniques required time, dedication, and talent. It's not special. I have been at a junior level for more than half a year now. Shia curled her lips in annoyance. I didn't know it would be this bothersome to find a blood crystal flower. Don't mind me asking, but shouldn't it be easy for you to obtain it? Levi inquired. I mean, your family's wealth and reputation should have been more than enough to secure a flower, even if it was located in other holy regions. No, thank you. I would rather shoot myself in the head before I ask help from that controlling narcissist, Shia uttered coldly, as she made a gun gesture next to her temple. Levi knew that she was referring to her father, as he had heard quite many crazy stories that painted him in a bad light. If this was his perception of his character from mere stories, he didn't dare imagine what Shia was dealing with daily. Forget that old geezer and tell me more about your peculiar spiritual vision. Shia asked curiously, Bleeder has already told me that you were the one spotting the hog's ambush. Oh, it's nothing special, really. Levi smiled. I have gained the ability to see Nightcrawlers and Daywalkers in the real world in their spiritual aura form. What do you mean it's nothing special? Shia's eyes widened in shock. You have a freaking superpower without even being a Daywalker. Shia's reaction was understandable. She knew that Nightcrawlers could exist either in the real world or in the shadow dimension. Those two were considered physical planes, while the Bridge of Darkness was the spiritual link to both dimensions. However, they could access the Bridge of Darkness only from the shadow dimension, whether they were contracted or not. That's why Bleeder and the others were incapable of seeing the Dirt Eater hogs in the real world through the bridge, just like they could not see humans unless they were connected to the Bridge of Darkness. In simpler terms, their vision was limited to only Nightcrawlers existing in the shadow dimension or the Bridge of Darkness, unlike Levi. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a superpower. Levi smiled faintly as he watched Jamal and Sergio's humanoid spiritual auras. But it does bring some humane life into my dim world. You are crazy. How can you downplay such a busted cheat? Shia spoke excitedly, already seeing the crazy possibilities. You are like a radar to Nightcrawlers. You can see their physical forms if they were in the shadow dimension, and their spiritual forms if they were in the real world. None of them can escape your sight. Then what? Levi chuckled in self-derision. Will this help me become a daywalker? I have already tried my best to sell it to Nightcrawlers, but all of them still rejected me. Shia's excitement died down. She realized that while Levi's spiritual vision was amazing, it still wouldn't change the fact that he could not grow as a daywalker consistently as the others without eyes. Sure, he could utilize growth totems, but they were too expensive to maintain consistent growth compared to simply absorbing the sunlight directly. I mean, while your future as a daywalker seems grim, I do believe that you can become a great scout using your ability. Shia tried to uplift him. I, for one, will be more than delighted to have you in my squad. Without your help, the hogs would have made me sweat a bit. Thank you for the offer, but I have no interest in giving up on my dream, Levi said calmly. Suit yourself, but don't forget, Shia whispered suggestively near his ear. If you fail to uphold your end of the bargain, I will own you either way. I will have no complaints, Levi replied peacefully. Chapter 13, A Movement from the Shadows. After harvesting the crystallized seeds, Shia's party continued through towards the depths of the harrowing forest. Unfortunately, their luck hadn't turned around. They still hadn't discovered a single blood crystal flower or even other natural dimensional treasures. Yet, none of them were disheartened. They understood that natural dimensional treasures were highly sought after by both Nightcrawlers and humans. After all, Nightcrawlers needed them for evolution even if they weren't contracted. As for humans, besides the known use for evolution, those natural treasures opened a path to many miracles. In addition, they could be sold or used to ask for favors if offered to the Solar Aegis Sanctuary depending on their rarity. For such well-desired treasures, it was only normal for the previous Nightcrawler nest to hoard them and for the Sunstrike Agency to clear them out, leaving only some crumbs for the rogue explorers. Hours went by, and before long, Shia's party had made it to the center of the harrowing forest. As they walked past a thick bush, the party was exposed to a stunning scene. "Whoa, is that an umbrella?" Arthur exclaimed. His pupils widened to the limit at the sight of a gigantic, broken-apart umbrella on top of a destroyed hill. The entire area was destroyed as trees were uprooted, boulders shattered, and even hills broke apart, leaving behind crumbled cliffs. The umbrella was crafted out of black wood and was split apart into tens of pieces, lying all over the place. If it wasn't for the canopy and the shaft being relatively near each other, giving the shape of a broken umbrella, Arthur wouldn't have guessed it. Using a black wooden umbrella for protection from the sun above their nest. Sergio sneered, "They are even stealing our products and using them in their favor." "I would take an umbrella any day than a sealed dome of darkness," Shia commentated as she walked towards the ruined nest. "Dome of darkness?" Arthur tilted his head in confusion. "Is it what I am thinking? How can you not know this?" Levi frowned. "Are you sleeping through your classes?" Cough, "I just forget easily." Levi knew that he was lying through his teeth, but all he could do was sigh helplessly at his brother's pure hatred for studying. "You know that Nightcrawler nests are separated by their sizes, the number of Nightcrawlers, the average nest tier, and lastly the highest tier?" Levi asked. "I know that much," Arthur answered, seemingly insulted by the question. Levi's eyelids twitched at his tone and continued, "While there is a hidden criterion to judge a nest's true danger level, it's their protective measure against the sunlight. In the case of a nest with a 15-kilometer surface area, Tier 5 Nightcrawler as its ruler, and above 100 Nightcrawlers as the troops, they are named shadow castles like this one. But in some rare cases, the same conditions might be met, yet the nest would be much more dangerous than a shadow castle." Levi paused. "All because of the nest protective measures." "You mean this umbrella isn't that good?" Arthur raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Based on its shaft's height, I believe it should at least cast a protective shadow over 5 kilometers of surface area. I never said it was bad, but it's nowhere near as overwhelming as a dome of darkness." Levi shared as he looked above him. "Imagine if this entire forest was covered in a dome of black wood. What agency would dare challenge it on their own even if they knew that the nest was a shadow castle?" "I see." Arthur nodded. While he may not know as much as his brother, he understood that if a territory was obscured in darkness for a long time, the corruption seeping from the shadow dimension was multiplied by 10, if not more. He knew that when a certain degree of corruption was achieved, the entire environment would become a permanent part of the shadow dimension. The shadow dimension's atmosphere was extremely deadly to citizens and even low-level daywalkers. In other words, those domes of darkness were nothing but a death trap even if the nests were categorized as shadow castle or a midnight dominion. "For a non-daywalker, you sure know a lot." Jamal smiled after listening to Levi's whole explanation. "I read a lot." Levi smiled back. "Enough chit-chat and start searching for the flowers," Shia ordered sternly. "Mantis group will move at dawn. We have a few hours at best before the forest turns into a stew of daywalkers." "On it." The squad got busy immediately, leaving Levi sitting alone in the center of their search zone. After finding out his special ability, he was entrusted fully with scouting ahead and alarming them if any Nightcrawlers were nearby. Their journey to the center wouldn't have gone so smoothly if it wasn't for him. While the party was racing against time, an army was being prepared at the gates of the outpost under Mantis' leadership. At the moment, he was giving a speech while standing above a box, facing the crowd. "Listen up, people. Lord Darius and his honored raid squad have already gotten the difficult part out of the way," he uttered proudly, "getting rid of the shadow castle that has been terrorizing the southern borders of our precious holy region." Long live the Sunstrike Agency. Long live Lord Darius. Long live the Sunstrike Agency. Long live Lord Darius. The Daywalkers associated with the Sunstrike Agency didn't hesitate to shout out loudly amongst the crowd, pride covering their expressions. The rest of the Daywalkers might not have shown a similar zealous reaction, but they did give out nods of appreciation. All we have to do now is to clear the harrowing forest and close up all the remaining Stygian gates to reclaim the territory. We planned on moving at dawn, but since everyone is already here, and I don't expect any new arrivals, we will immediately commence the follow-up expedition. Mantis inquired, "Does anyone have a problem with Sue?" Seeing that the majority of Daywalkers shook their heads, Mantis turned around and walked towards the closed-shut gate. The Daywalkers formed a long queue behind him since they all needed to have their Daywalkers' IDs checked by the guards. In a short while, everyone was out of the outpost and summoned their night mounts. Some used similar Nightcrawlers as mounts, and some possessed unique ones, drawing the envy of those nearby. "Move out!" Mantis shouted with his feminine voice as he extended his hand towards the forest. Dust clouds rose as more than 100 Daywalkers rode in one massive group. Although most of them were considered rookie and junior Daywalkers, their numbers were large enough to strike terror even on a Tier 4 Nightcrawler. Meanwhile, at the far back of the army, an average-looking tan-skinned girl with long brunette hair styled into a ponytail was riding on a black fox. The preys are on the move. As her honey-brown eyes scanned her nearby peers, they turned pitch black for a split second before returning to normal. "Malak, what are you doing so far behind?" A nice-looking teenager approached her with a charming smile. He was blonde and had piercing blue eyes, a typical handsome European boy. He was riding on a metallic armored camel, yet his speed was matching the front-runners easily. "Danny, you know my dust allergies will act up if I get too close to the group." Malak blushed, lowering her head. "Ha ha, my bad, my bad," Danny offered with a chuckle. "You want to ride with me? I will shield you with my life from the havoc of dust." The nearest squad rolled their eyes at his corniness, believing that he was going to strike out. But to their surprise, Malak agreed with a shy head nod. Tisk, they weren't lying when they said that if a girl wants you, it takes minimum effort to bag her. "Hey, Matthew, this is enough to show you that it's time to give up on your crush. No amount of flowers and love letters will fix your busted face." "Fuck off. At least I wasn't cheated on." "You little..." Ouch! He aimed under the belt. The Daywalkers teased each other as they watched Malak jump over Danny's camel and reseal her fox inside the ceiling totem. While those two were experiencing a dawn of romance under the envious looks of their peers, the telepathic message had already reached its destination. At the depth of the underground, 5 kilometers away from the harrowing forest, a sea of Nightcrawlers were seen huddled up together in a massive, dimly lighted cave. Most of the Nightcrawlers were Tier 1, Tier 2, and of the same spider archetype. They had 8 hairy legs, 8 crimson eyes, and long clawed teeth reaching the ground. The clawed teeth clicked together, creating a disturbing noise across the cave. "Settle down, my children, settle down. Our time to feast is within reach." Chapter 14, Queen Drewebra. Suddenly, an enticing, melodious voice resonated from above, calming the agitated army of spiders. As the noise died out, the voice owner moved past the dim light, casting a horrific shadow of a humongous queen spider tiptoeing on a complicated web. But then, a single web line fell from the ceiling, and what came down wasn't the giant, horrific spider queen, but a stunning, blue-skinned, curvy humanoid female with violet, wavy hair, 2 dark red eyes, and smooth violet fur covering her private parts. If one looked at her from the front, they would be absolutely smitten, as no monstrous qualities were displaced. However, the moment they looked at her pin, their hearts would be chilled at the size of her abdomen attached to her tailbone. As Queen Drewebra sat in midair, crossing her muscular, lean legs, another telepathic message resounded in her mind. This time, the voice was rough and rugged. "Queen Drewebra, everything is going according to the plan. The Daywalkers will reach the harrowing forest in less than an hour. How about those early vermins, and especially the red-haired girl? Have they perished yet?" "No, they have already reached the center of the forest. Our ambushes fail every time, like they have a great detection skill." Queen Drewebra frowned in displeasure. Seemingly sensing her dissatisfaction, the messenger hastily tried to appease her. My queen, I will make sure they will be the first to die. We will move once the forest is sealed. No one and nothing will ruin your precious feast. Nelvas, words mean nothing to me. Queen Drewebra uttered icily, bring me results, or you will be the appetizer to my children. Understood. Meanwhile, at the depths of the fallen Shadow Castle nest, a devilish humanoid goat with two curvy horns and a long shadowy goatee was seen sitting on a chair made out of rocks. He was tapping his finger on the armchair with an irked expression. Drewebra is merciless and loyal only to her hunger. She didn't hesitate to weaken my lord's nest and leak the information to the humans as just to bait the follow-up Daywalker cleaners and feast on them. He thought to himself, cold sweat covering his back. She is a true demon, and if I were to mess up her feast, she won't hesitate to eat my crystallized seed. Nelvas was the only surviving intelligent Tier 3 Nightcrawler from the Shadow Castle nest. He didn't survive because he was lucky. He betrayed his own nest after watching with his own eyes how Queen Drewebra manhandled his lord. In the world of Nightcrawlers, there was no such thing as ultimate loyalty, only fear and respect for absolute strength. The moment Nelvas saw what happened to his lord, his respect turned into scorn, and he didn't hesitate to jump boats. While this had saved him from falling with the nest, his treatment under Queen Drewebra was even worse than a Tier 1 Nightcrawler. That's because Queen Drewebra wasn't following the same nesting system as other Nightcrawlers, where the Nightcrawler's tier and his achievements defined his hierarchy standing within the nest. She was considered a lurker Nightcrawler who hunted after both humans and Nightcrawlers to fulfill her hunger, evolution, and her children's endless appetite. In other words, Nelvas understood that his worth in her eyes was next to nothing unless he proved himself. Fuck, if I can't even take out a bunch of kids, I might as well commit suicide. Nelvas' expression turned sinister. A while later, the sun was peeking over the horizon, offering its rays of hope and safety. Shia lifted her head and glanced at the sky slowly being painted in lavender as the first light scattered over the hills. Mantis's party must have already reached the forest. Shia rubbed her tired eyelids. Let's take a rest for 2 hours. Use SR drops and get some sleep. I will take the first shift. Although Daywalkers didn't need the medication to get a natural 8 hours of sleep due to their contracted Nightcrawlers' protection, they still relied on the SR pills heavily. After all, a 2-hour of induced coma that provided an equal rest to a 6-hour sleep was a true hack in life. Unfortunately, those free hours of the day didn't come free of cost. I can't believe we haven't found a single blood crystal flower. Jamal sighed as he sat down on the ground, feeling disheartened. Now it will be more annoying with Mantis' army snooping everywhere. Sergio kicked a rock in irritation. Don't be discouraged. Shia replied calmly. We did find some seeds at least. If we get unlucky for an entire week straight, we will leave with the forest's soil and give it to my family's botanists to grow me the flowers I need. For the rest of the materials, I will just find a way to buy them from the Sunstrike Agency. They must have an overstock. Wait, this isn't part of the deal. Arthur immediately protested. Even I know rare graded natural treasures take months to grow at their optimal environment. You don't have to worry. Your brother will get his recommendation. He made sure of it in the contract. Shia glanced at Levi, who was sitting alone against a tree in silence. Oh yeah, I forgot. After hearing this, Arthur's shitty memory acted up and made him remember the term she was referring to in the contract. The term forced Shia to fulfill her part of the deal and help Levi participate in the upcoming assembly, even if his method hadn't been checked out yet. After all, it wasn't his problem if Shia failed to collect the materials in the next 2 months. You guys have drops or pills? Shia asked the Larson brothers. We have neither. Arthur lied through his teeth shamelessly. Unbothered, Shia threw a pill bottle to Arthur and said, Keep it with you. Whoa, Arthur's eyes gleamed in delight. We got 2 bottles in 1 day? Life is good. Then he went to feed his brother a pill, but he rejected it. It's okay, I'm not tired. I will take the first shift with Shia. Levi smiled. You should get some rest. You have been working tirelessly. This is nothing to what I do at the gym, Arthur smirked cockily as he flexed his massive muscles, annoying Jamal and Sergio with one move. Jim Rat, cocky asshole. They mumbled under their breaths, not wanting to look jealous in front of Shia. Then they pulled their own SR drops and poured one drop on each eye. They entered their tents and waited for the medication to take effect. Just like being drugged with anesthesia, in less than 10 seconds, their eyes became too heavy to open. Once they were closed, their minds entered a mimicked deep sleep state. Since this state lasted for less than 2 hours, they could dream all they wanted, and the Nightcrawlers wouldn't bother them even if they had no contracted Nightcrawler to keep watch. Arthur soon joined them under his brother's insistence, leaving only Shia and Levi awake. "Do you know anything about tracking?" Shia inquired curiously. "I know a bit," Levi answered. "Good, come help me throw Mantis off our back." Shia sneered. "I know that two-faced prick. He will come rushing here to screw with us." "Oh, okay." Levi stood up, dusting his buttocks. Then he asked one question. "Is there a tracker within his party?" "That's the thing. He has a great tracker called Masai." Shia rubbed her eyebrows. "He is rarely wrong." "I see." Levi smiled serenely. "Leave it to me then." "Oh, you have something?" Shia raised an eyebrow in intrigue. As Levi was sharing his plan with Shia, Mantis's massive raid finally reached the forest. The moment they stepped inside, they separated into their chosen squads and each went to their designated location to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Mantis's main squad headed straight to the center of the forest. Shia's party must have already found something precious. "We can't stop them, but we can slow them down." Mantis spoke coldly, though his feminine voice wasn't helping. If it was up to him, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate her entire party and ensure that all the remaining treasures would go to his agency. That's because he wasn't the one funding this expedition, but his agency. However, as its leader, he would be compensated heavily for each natural treasure found. Unfortunately, it was difficult to make a move against another Daywalker when they were using the Neuralens. Those lenses were recording everything each second and transmitting the data to the cloud services of their respectful holy region, ensuring that the Daywalkers behave even in the wastelands. The Daywalkers only agreed to such a breach of privacy due to the nocturnal contracts. The staff responsible for those cloud services were under strict contractual bindings to not peer through anyone's data unless an anomaly occurred, and a warranty was used to extract the data. Those were the precautions used to protect the Daywalkers from each other. But if there were one thing humans were masters of, it was finding ways to adapt and bypass the rules. Unfortunately for Mantis and his army, humans weren't the only ones with the cruel cunningness to harm their own race for selfish reasons. "My queen, your food is preparing itself neatly on the plate." Malak shared with a sinister smile, her eyes turning pitch black for a split second. Danny felt a sudden chill on his back as he was riding his camel through the forest. When he turned around, he noticed Malak's sweet smile while she looked at him. Immediately, the smile washed away the chill, leaving him to smile back, feeling butterflies in his stomach. "Are you comfortable?" Danny asked while touching her arm. "You have no idea," Malak replied sweetly as she leaned against his back. The same Daywalkers in their squad couldn't help but roll their eyes in annoyance and speed past them, incapable of taking in the cringe. Chapter 15. Getting Tracked Down. Sometime later, Mantis and his main squad arrived at the location of the fallen Shadow Castle nest. It took them significantly less time than Shia's squad since they didn't dismount or stop once to search the traveled areas for the natural treasures. "What a beautiful destruction," Mantis said in awe as he gazed at the ruined, closed-shut Nightcrawler's nest. "Our lord and his honored squad have ensured no nest revival occurs," one of his squad mates uttered proudly. While they couldn't see past the destroyed cave, they were certain that most, if not all, the underground network of the nest was completely obliterated. This was a must-have procedure in any expedition since those caves and tunnels were considered Stygian gates and would attract the Nightcrawlers in great numbers. If any passing intelligent Nightcrawler noticed such a gathering of low-tiered Nightcrawlers in a perfectly sound tunneling network, they wouldn't hesitate to make it their new nest. Thus, both the government and the agencies had to ensure the removal of any chance of a nest revival. Suddenly, Mantis's attention was attracted to cleaned-up, half-covered footsteps leading to the northern side of the forest. "Masai, look here." He called for the party's tracking expert to check the trail. A well-built, dark-skinned man with a great hairline and a pierced ear crouched next to the trail. Then he looked in the direction of the footsteps with a deep frown. Not saying much, he followed the track for a few seconds and then came back with the same expression. "What's the issue?" Mantis inquired. "The trail makes no sense." Masai clarified with a rugged tone. "There are no additional marks left after the footsteps. No broken twigs, no crushed leaves, no disturbed bushes, nothing." "Are you saying Shia have left behind a decoy footprint to throw us off their trail?" Mantis knitted his eyebrows. "Either that, or they have cleared their path after leaving behind those footprints." Masai shook his head. "No one that careful will leave behind such a footprint. It's a decoy, I'm certain." Mantis smirked. "I know that arrogant bitch will try everything in her power to keep me away from messing with her quest." "If you say so." Masai stood up and looked around him. "Spread out and search for any trails, and be careful not to ruin them." Mantis' main squad consisted of 10 daywalkers, including him and Masai. Thus, it shouldn't take them long to find clues with this much manpower. As expected, after 10 minutes of scrutinizing the entire place, a squad mate whistled twice, attracting everyone's attention to him. Mantis and Masai paid him a visit, and they were shown a small heap of leaves shattered and digging deep into the mud. While the footprint was barely visible, as the wind had already ruined most of it, for experts like Masai, it was more than enough. 47 shoe size. Masai murmured as he measured the hidden footprint. "I believe I have seen a giant muscular dude in their squad." Yes, she did have 2 civilians accompanying her. Mantis nodded. "One is blind, and one resembles a tank." "This is it then." Masai gestured for the rest of the squad to gather. Then they followed closely behind him. While they moved slowly, Masai was continuing to find new tracks, always left behind by Arthur. "The others are excellent at hiding their tracks, but there isn't much they can do about a walking, unexperienced behemoth." Masai shared while increasing his pace, sure that he was on the right path. Unfortunately, if there was a camera above the forest, and it panned out, they would be shocked to find themselves moving in a different direction from Shia's party. To be precise, Shia's party was moving in the direction of the first located footprints, heading north of the forest. "Are you sure your strategy didn't make it worse?" Sergio asked for the 100th time as he looked behind, paranoid that he would get jumped at any moment. "You worry too much," Levi said calmly. "If their tracker truly was great at his craft, he would easily notice that our original tracks are fake. This will drive them to search for additional tracks. Once they find my brother's naturally crafted footprint, they will believe our track is a decoy even more and will commit to the actual fake trail. As they go deeper and Masai sees the additional bits and pieces, he would become more certain until, on the other side..." "What's wrong?" Mantis frowned after noticing that Masai had stopped and seemed a bit confused. "Nothing, the way is here." Masai nodded and then continued heading deeper on the eastern side of the forest, though a sweat drop was falling down his forehead. "Where is the rest of the trail? Did I lose their track? Did I miss something and take the wrong way? It can't be." Masai glanced above him. "Did they go airborne or something? Shia does have an eagle as a mount. Or wait a second. Don't tell me the first track was a fake decoy and that they were daring enough to place it and head in the exact same path." Masai soon shook his head, removing this foolish idea from his mind. "I am overthinking it. Shia isn't that shrewd or crazy to risk using reverse psychology on me when she has never met me before. A trail is bound to surface sooner or later." 10 minutes later, nothing. "Where is it? Where is it?" Meanwhile, Mantis and the rest of his squad were following his lead blindly, even chatting here and there like they were on a safari. Another 10 minutes. "Where the fuck is it? Have they teleported? There isn't even the aftermath of searching for the treasures." Alas, his failure was finally starting to show externally as he was losing his cool before his squad and mumbling all the time with sweat drenching his entire face. In the end, Mantis couldn't hold it and had to ask him. "Masai, you know the way, right?" Masai remained silent. "Right?" Mantis repeated with more emphasis, his expression turning slowly dark. "Sorry, boss. I think we are lost." Masai confessed at last with a defeated expression. Silence engulfed the party, killing the chill chatter immediately. A moment later, Mantis snapped furiously. What the fuck do you mean we are lost? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Masai covered his face in shame. They must have left double decoys. One at the start, and the second one we committed on. After we went deeper, Shia must have taken everyone airborne one by one, and dropped them off in a different location. Are you telling me we have been following a dead track for the last half an hour? Mantis gritted his teeth. Masai leaned against a tree in silence. A moment later, Motherfucker! A thunderous feminine curse traveled across the forest and forced nearby birds to, remain in their places as the curse carried not a hint of threat in it. Meanwhile, many kilometers away, Levi was on the final notes of his explanation. They will assume Shia's eagle was used before considering the first decoy to be a real trail, since it was simply too much of a risk to use reverse psychology when many other options are left. Levi smiled innocently as he held his brother's forearm, who was leading him at the back of the party. Everything you have said is heavily reliant on Masai's personality and tracking skills. Sergio frowned. How can you be so sure that he will do exactly what you prescribed when you have never seen the dude? Levi went silent for a moment before answering calmly. You don't need to see or know a person by heart to predict his actions. You just need to trust that he will stay true to his nature and set of skills. Shia, Sergio, and Jamal couldn't help but turn around and glance at Levi in a daze. As they watched him walk on uneven grounds and sometimes even trip and get pulled by his brother under his constant reminders, they didn't know how to react. But Bleeder knew how. Boy, your maturity is too creepy for your age. I hear that a lot, Levi chuckled. UK size 12. Chapter 16, the bait, the trap, the horror. Although Levi's plan was sound and he seemed confident in it, Jamal was still ordered to use his spiritual arrow to scout around them every once in a while. After all, Mantis wasn't the only one in the forest. Fortunately, no one appeared in his arrow's field of vision. When he relayed the news, Shia ordered everyone to start searching the area for natural treasures again. She still hadn't lost hope, even when the center of the forest turned out to be a bust. Since the forest was quite humongous with hills, lakes, and rivers, it would be hard to meet Shia's party randomly, although Mantis's party had more than 100 daywalkers. In addition, everyone was too focused on finding natural treasures to bother themselves with antagonizing Shia's party. Mantis couldn't make such an order when the contract details involved only finding the treasures. Thus, hours went by in peace, and before long, the sun was showering everyone with its final rays of light. Prepare your nightwear straps and light sticks, Mantis ordered with an irritated look, knowing that it was near impossible to find Shia anymore unless they dropped everything and completely focused on her. As the night veil fell over the forest and the moon cast its gentle light from the slight gaps of the clouds, only small dots of light were seen spread out across the forest. Sometime later, is it just me or is the forest somewhat too peaceful? Masai murmured while looking around him, not spotting a single roaming Nightcrawler. Are you doubting my agency's capabilities? Mantis frowned coldly. You think we are some kind of second-rated agency that doesn't clear the NT? Scritch, scritch. Suddenly, a faint rustling noise echoed in everyone's ears, akin to tiny legs skittering over dried leaves. She! Mantis silenced everyone with a finger near his mouth and leaned closer to the noise. As he focused on it, it started to get louder and louder until it resounded akin to the thundering steps of 1,000 army. Then they appeared, a sea of horrific big spiders charging in their direction, covering their entire field of sight. Run! Ruin! Absolutely petrified, Mantis let out a high-pitched scream while sprinting at the top of his speed in the opposite direction of the spiders. What the hell? How come there are so many spiders? Masai and the rest of the squad didn't linger for even a moment as they took off after Mantis while summoning their signature weapons. All of them shared similar expressions: horror, disbelief, and confusion. Unfortunately, no one was there to clarify their questions as this exact scenario was repeating across the entire forest. Meanwhile, Shia's party was still working tirelessly, turning everything upside down. but to no avail. I am starting to think that those flowers have gone extinct. Arthur wiped his forehead in annoyance. They are called treasures for a reason, Arthur. If they were... Levi's smile suddenly turned upside down after spotting a bizarre moving spiritual wave at a rapid speed. When he focused hard on it, he finally managed to see some distinctive features of spiders. He stood up immediately and warned with a solemn tone, "An uncanny number of spiders are approaching us. We have to leave now." Wait, what? Spiders? It can't be. This region isn't known to harbor any spider archetype. Sergio and Jamal commentated in confusion, but Levi had no plans to explain the situation. He called for his brother, and Arthur swiftly took hold of him, giving him a piggyback. Then he sprinted in the opposite direction, not waiting for anyone to react. When SHT hit the fan, the Larson brothers only cared about protecting each other. After Shia saw his extreme reaction and knew that he wasn't the type to mess around, she swiftly summoned her weapon and took off after them. This left Jamal and Sergio to glance at each other in a daze for a few seconds. But then, their ears picked up on the creepy rustling sound, an unfamiliar noise in a silent forest. "Wait for us!" Scared shitless, they dropped everything and chased after their party, regrouping in no time. "Oh, no! Save me!" Before Shia could ask Levi about what he saw in detail, a distant symphony of cries and screams engulfed the forest, sending chills coursing down everyone's spines. "What's going on?" Arthur asked, agitated. "How the fuck will I know?" Shia replied with a grim look while glancing behind her, noticing thousands of crimson dots through the darkness. They were too close to their comfort. Meanwhile, many thoughts were roaming through Levi's mind, trying his best to keep his cool in such a dangerous situation. As he listened to the agonizing and despairing screams echoing across the forest, he understood that it was impossible for the timing to be this perfect, that all of them were ambushed at once. This made him realize that the spiders were following orders and that this entire ambush was organized by an intelligent entity. In public records, the harrowing forest shadow castle nest was under the leadership of a Nightcrawler from the Groot Goat archetype, which meant most of the Nightcrawlers under him should be of a similar archetype for easier control. Levi understood that Nightcrawlers respected each other's authority following two options. Either they were of the same archetype, or the tier difference was beyond 3. In simpler terms, a Tier 4 Nightcrawler could command with absolute authority a Tier 1 Nightcrawler of any species. But if they were of the same species, just being 2 tiers higher would give them the same absolute authority. That's why most Nightcrawlers' nests were usually filled with similar archetypes for easier management. This means those spiders didn't belong to the nest and are under a whole different entity. In other words, Levi's skin felt cold all of a sudden after it finally hit him. We are being hunted by a lurker spider queen. Even Levi, who was almost always composed and fearless, couldn't help but feel dread creeping up on his heart. He had read that lurker Nightcrawlers were a minimum Tier 5 since they needed to be powerful to protect themselves from other Nightcrawlers too. To be hunted by a rogue Tier 5 Nightcrawler? This was scarier than going on an expedition. "We have to leave the forest, now," he shouted, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. "Did you find something?" Shia frowned. Just as Levi was about to give her a brief version of his findings, his spiritual vision detected a pincer assault of another wave of spiders, coming from the front and sides. It was like everywhere he looked, the only thing in his field of vision was disorganized, shadowy spiritual waves, though the numbers varied extensively. "We are surrounded. Head east and prepare for battle." Hearing Levi's orders, Arthur didn't even question his brother. He changed his direction abruptly, using a boulder to kick off it, and launched himself with minimized monument loss. Such a maneuver would have ruined any normal person's knees, but Arthur's muscles weren't purely for strength purposes, as he was as extremely flexible too. Shia and the others swiftly caught up to them and took the lead, forming the same battle formation with the Larson brothers in the center. In a few moments at best, everyone finally saw what Levi warned them about as a dozen giant, hideous, hairy spiders entered their illumination strip range. "It's flesh-eating spiders." Sergio's expression turned ugly immediately. He knew that those little bastards loved eating the flesh of their prey while still alive. Most Nightcrawlers prioritize killing their prey first to ensure a comfortable feasting experience. But those monsters couldn't care less. "Pierce through them," Shia shouted. "Jamal!" Knowing what she wanted, Jamal pulled the bow from his back and aimed at the biggest gathering of spiders in front. Then he fired an arrow of concentrated spiritual energy at them. Piercing shock dart. Before his agitated holler could reach the ears of his party members, the arrow pierced through the first spider, the second, the third, and everything in its path. Boom! Then a split second later, a thundering shockwave was emitted in its path, hurling the closest spiders away and throwing them against trees. The hell? Arthur watched with his jaw dropped at the cleared path before them. During most of their battles in the forest, Shia took care of everything, leaving Jamal to use his energy purely to scout. Only now did he realize that Jamal was capable of carrying his own weight too. The path is clear, but the other waves are joining together. Levi shared with a solemn tone, "If they were to catch us, it won't end pretty." The constant cries and screams of other daywalkers supported Levi's claim, leaving everyone with ugly expressions at such a disturbing development. This is beyond the norm. We have to call for reinforcement. Without waiting for permission, Sergio requested Astra I to declare an emergency and request reinforcement from the closest outpost. Although they were in a private agency, they were entitled to receive governmental aid in such emergencies. Alas, the answer he received drained the color out of his chubby face. "Astra's services are offline. Please reconnect." "Astra's services are offline. Please reconnect." Each time he called for her, "Say, Mom," the same message resounded in his ear. Not daring to believe it, Sergio pressed a button on his earpiece, and a tiny hologram appeared at the side of his vision. When he saw an X mark on the signal bars, his soul almost left his body. "Did you call for help?" she inquired. The signal is off," Sergio stuttered, pure dread engulfing his expression. The moment everyone heard him, they swiftly checked their own devices and ended up with the same discovery. Someone is jamming the signal. Chapter 17, The Bait, the Trap, the Horror. 2. Levi felt a chill course in his spine after realizing that their situation was far from a random hunting mission by a lurker spider queen. This ambush was orchestrated with either someone on the inside or the lurker spider queen must have landed on a signal jammer. In both scenarios, it didn't look good for them. "Keep going east. The moment we put a decent distance, we will summon our mounts and leave this place," Shia ordered coldly, not showing an ounce of panic. If it was up to her, she would have already summoned her eagle and at least helped the Larson brothers get out of the forest. Unfortunately, the summoning of totem mounts required 15 seconds minimum while using low-graded ceiling totems. At the moment, they didn't even have a couple of seconds to scratch their heads. While every single squad was trying their best to reach out to their private agencies, their families, or authorities to rescue them, Nelvas was seen standing at the highest point in the forest, the destroyed shaft of the wooden black umbrella. He was crouching with his elbows placed on his knees while carrying a small silver device in his right hand. The device was square-shaped and had a long antenna, beeping once every couple of seconds. How did Weber get her hands on this? Nelvas wondered while toying with the device. He had heard from his previous lord that such devices were banned by the human race since they could do more than disrupt their tower's signals. If fallen into the wrong hands, they could be engineered to shut down electricity networks, power sources, defensive systems such as the sun disk, and more. That's why those devices were halted from production many years ago, and anyone found developing or in possession of one would be thrown in jail for a very long time. "I know she is a Tier 5 powerhouse, but still," Nelvas rubbed his long goatee thoughtfully, knowing that it was extremely difficult for even high-ranked daywalkers to get their hands on this device. "She must have her own network within the human race." Nelvas narrowed his eyes. "Is killing that girl part of the feast, or does it go much deeper?" Soon, Nelvas shook his head, realizing that he was snooping into matters that might get him killed. He returned to his main task, which was placing the signal jammer at the highest point of the forest to ensure that no one would get a connection. After he was done, he looked in the direction of Shia's party and smiled sinisterly. Boom! Boom! Thud! On a different side of the forest, Mantis and his squad mates were seen fighting for their life after getting surrounded from all sides by the spider's army. Unlike Shia's party, they had no Levi to alert them in advance about the spider's sneaky ambushes. Sure, they had a scout in the party, but his abilities worked similarly to Jamal's. He needed to be stationary and have it active all the time, which was impossible considering the exertion it takes on his energy levels. Munir, help out Masai. Don, use your goddamn ultimate innate ability already. Nikki, stop fucking saving your assault totems and deal with your side. We have to break through, Bastille. Mantis positioned himself on top of a tree above the chaotic battlefield underneath. He was scanning the entire field and giving out orders non-stop, helping the squad possess some form of teamwork. Unfortunately, he could see that his efforts were for naught, as the pain of spiders was simply never-ending. The moment his team dealt with a group, they were jumped by 3. Fuck, why the hell is this happening in my first leading mission? Even the signal is cut off. Am I being set up? Mantis's expression kept turning ugly by the second, understanding that he would be responsible for everyone's death even when this situation wasn't his fault. All due to the nocturnal contracts having a life insurance term in case a hired daywalker died in a mission or an expedition. He expected a couple of casualties here and there once he signed over 100 daywalkers. But as he listened to the nonstop pain cries in the forest, he could tell that their situation was much worse than he could imagine. What do you think, Tina? Mantis asked for his partner's opinion. Advisor Alaric will kill you if you don't die fighting here. Mantis's expression turned desperate as he listened to his contracted Nightcrawler, who resembled a humanoid curvy praying mantis. She had a slender figure covered in emerald green chitin, while her eyes glowed with a bioluminescent light. You can't even run away on your own. You have to act as a hero and save as many as possible. This is the only way to ensure you receive minimum punishment, maybe even rewarded once an investigation carries through. Mantis knew she was right. If it was possible, he would have already dipped, leaving everyone at the mercy of their destiny. Sadly, the Neuralens was still recording everything and storing it until the connection returned. In other words, if he were to run away from his responsibilities, he would be exposed one way or another, unless he destroyed his entire squad's Neuralens devices. This left him with 2 choices, either die trying to be a hero or survive and be punished as a villain. Fuck me, Mantis summoned his signature weapon. It resembled a praying mantis's forearms with thousands of sharp, deadly teeth bent at a striking position, 100 dardares. Then, with a look of utter despair mixed with anger, he pounced at the biggest gathering of spiders while shouting, "Praying mantis arts, 1,000 cuts." His body suddenly disappeared midair, turning into a shadowy mirage with hundreds of green blades appearing here and there. Each time a blade appeared, a spider was sliced in half or had its head severed. Slice, slice, slice. The rest of the squad watched in astonishment. Mantis single-handedly took down more than 20 spiders in no time, creating a path to freedom from corpses. "What are you standing for? Follow me!" Not waiting for anyone, Mantis took the lead and charged headfirst into the incoming next wave of spiders, his body and weapon already tainted with sticky, nasty juices. But he couldn't care less. His bloodshot eyes reflected nothing but a strong desire to survive at all costs. While the 100 daywalkers were fighting for their lives in the depths of the harrowing forest, peaceful silence engulfed the outpost. Most of the traffic in outposts was related to daywalkers. Since the majority had already departed, the outpost was mostly occupied by government staff and guards. "Mickey, keep watch. I am going for a walk," the smoker guard shared lazily while standing up from his chair. "But Sir Feng Ling," Mickey gulped a mouthful, "you were assigned to guard the outpost as a disciplinary punishment. If you leave, they can track your location and accuse you of breaking your penalty." "Ah, how bothersome." Feng Ling rubbed his eyelids and said, "Fine, I will just smoke on top of the tower." But before Mickey could add anything, Feng Ling took a single step forward and suddenly disappeared, leaving behind him a mere cool breeze like he was never there. Mickey lifted his head and gazed at the top of the sun disk tower with an awed expression. "So freaking cool," Mickey murmured. If only he wasn't reckless and insubordinate, he would have been promoted to a gove. I am not in a position to judge anyone. Meanwhile, at the highest point of the sun disk tower, Feng Ling was seen sitting with one hand above his knee while dangling the other leg. He was trying to light up a cigarette, but it was too windy at such a height. Halt! With a single order, the wind suddenly froze around him. Then, Feng Ling ignited the cigarette in a single attempt and took a deep breath until the tip turned bright red. Immediately after he exhaled a cloud of smoke, the wind unfroze and took it away. That's the good stuff. Feng Ling showed a cozy smile as he gazed at the magnificent view around him. However, as his eyes landed on the harrowing forest, he couldn't help but knit his eyebrows in confusion. Mao, are you seeing what I am seeing? Chapter 18, Death Cocoon. A pitch-black cat emerged from his tie and sat on top of his shoulder. She had long, thick whiskers, making her resemble an old beardy cat. When she glanced lazily in the direction of the harrowing forest, her dark slit opened up widely, reflecting an abnormal scene. A gigantic, almost invisible web of walls surrounded the entire forest borders and seemingly grew taller each second, desiring to meet at the top. If it weren't for the moonlight being reflected once in a while by the web threads, no one would be able to see them even if they were close. Whoa, it's a death cocoon. Mao clicked her tongue. Your little fella's luck sure is rub. Before she completed her sentence, Feng Ling had already taken off towards the harrowing forest with an icy grimace. He was kicking the wind like he was bouncing off solid surfaces. Each kick sent him flying for more than hundreds of meters. His speed was enough to put even Shia's eagle to shame. Why the hell is there a lurker spider queen nearby, and how come no one has reached out for reinforcement? Although Feng Ling knew that the moment the death cocoon appeared, it was already too late to ask for reinforcement, he was still confused. Is she in possession of a signal jammer, or did she already slaughter everyone before they can make contact? He doubted the latter was true, as he knew that lurker spider queens seldom made their move personally unless threatened or forced. They always leave it to their armies of spiderlings. This made him assume that she was using a signal jammer, which was going to change the whole narrative of this ambush. Astra, call for a code purple to the capital. Location harrowing forest. I might go offline soon. The moment he finished his report, Feng Ling narrowed his eyes and increased his speed to the limit, leaving behind mere windy figures. Maybe it's not too late. I might save a few. As this thought took root, an image of Levi surfaced in Feng Ling's mind. It wasn't of their last meeting at the gate, but of the first time he had ever met him. The day he was still an anti-sleepwalker officer and responded to an abnormal electrical activity in a house within Tamara's upper neighborhood. He could never forget that day and the horror he had seen in that house. I might save him this time. A few minutes ago, Shia's party was still being hunted by an ever-growing army of spiders who never seemed to get tired or lost. Although Levi was acting as the perfect radar, helping them avoid the largest group of spiders and choose the weakest one to pierce through, the morale was at an all-time low. Every one of them knew that it was going to be extremely challenging to reach the eastern borders of the forest without exhausting every bit of their stamina. The flesh-eaters have heat vision. We might never leave enough distance to summon the mounts in peace. Levi frowned. We have to change our plan. I am all ears for suggestions, Shia responded while grasping tightly onto a necklace with a flaring sun symbol. We need 15 seconds at minimum to summon the mounts. Levi glanced at the spiritual wave behind them and guessed, I assume 30 meters are separating us. Based on their constant speed, if we were to stop, they would reach us in 5 seconds. This means we have to create a distraction good enough to buy us more than 10 seconds. What kind of distraction are you talking about? Sergio inquired, while sweating heavily, his big belly flapping all over the place. Although he looked unhealthy and unathletic, he was somehow capable of keeping up with the squad's speed. In fact, he was doing much better than Jamal, who was huffing and puffing like he was going to collapse at any given moment. When it came to daywalkers, appearances were deceiving. We need something strong enough to break them off the lurker spider queen's authority, Levi said. He had already updated them about the true intentions of those spiders and the actual gravity of their situation. Knowing that a lurker spider queen was hunting after them was enough to scare anyone straight. Thus, even when it looked like Levi had taken leadership of the group, none of them dared to complain. The only thing coursing through their minds was to survive this hellhole. Purified sunlight, Shia shared sternly. If we threw at them all of our growth totems and luminous snacks, I am certain they will fight amongst each other to eat them. My thoughts exactly. Levi nodded in approval. He understood that only purified sunlight was capable of breaking low-tiered nightcrawlers from their master's authority briefly, especially if it was in abundance. It was like putting a delicious snack in front of a starving dog who hadn't eaten in many days. Even if he was well-trained, his survival instincts would instantly take the wheel. Fuck, even our growth totems? Sergio's expression turned ugly as he glanced at his backpack. His reaction was understandable when considering that those growth totems were used by daywalkers to accelerate feeding their shadow life seeds with sunlight. The shadow life seeds were in every nightcrawler, and they were the singular organ responsible for their lifespan, evolution, intelligence, strength, life, and death. It was everything to a nightcrawler, and now it had become everything to humans as well. But more on that later. Fine, save them. The spiders will surely enjoy adding them as snacks while they feast on your corpse. Shia said coldly while letting go of the necklace. Damn it, if this doesn't work, my vengeful soul will haunt this forest for eternity. Sergio seemed on the verge of tears as he reached out to his backpack, pulling 2 pouches. One was filled with luminous snacks and the other with growth totems. Jamal brought out his own and they handed them to Shia mid-sprint. Shia evaded a tree and glanced at the contents of the pouches. When she noticed the quantity and quality of the growth totems, her eyelids twitched. Are you withholding? No? Why? Never mind, this is good enough. She poured everything into a single pouch and then she pressed them together, activating all the dormant luminous snacks and totems, causing the pouch to shimmer brightly. She traded glances with everyone, and when she saw Arthur tap on Levi's hand, she turned around and threw the pouch behind them. Prepare your night mounts. Sergio and Jamal pulled their ceiling totems and held them tightly, awaiting Levi's call with looks of expectancy. Although Levi had no vision of the pouch, he focused on the movement of the spiritual wave of spiders. Meanwhile, the sea of spiders was as terrifying as ever, jumping on trees and walking on each other, uncaring about anything else but the moving humanoid heat auras before them. It was like they were on a mission, and they would not stop until they fulfilled it. But just as it seemed like their resolve was unchanging, a sudden, beautiful brilliance appeared in their sight. Immediately after they saw the light, their shadow life seed tingled like crazy, sending electrifying shockwaves across their entire system. Then every single spider in the vicinity of the brilliant light let out a unified screech and charged toward it like they were injected with steroids. The first spider to arrive sank its giant fangs into the pouch and swung its head, cutting the pouch in half and hurling all the activated luminous snacks and growth totems everywhere. The spiders halted their sprint and started fighting over every single piece, even biting each other to snatch it. It worked. Summon the mounts. Go, go. Levi notified his squad the moment he saw the great disturbance amongst the spiders' army. Shia, Sergio, and Jamal were clever enough to throw the ceiling totems tens of meters away from them after uttering the incantation to ensure no second was lost. The wooden ceiling totems turned brighter and bigger in midair, and even when they landed, the process still continued. When Shia's party arrived near them, they counted the seconds with held breaths, waiting impatiently for the ceiling totems to shatter. We will make it. The spiders are still fighting over the purified sunlight. Levi eased their worry while gazing at the disturbed spiritual wave. As he claimed, the ceiling totems shattered after a few rough moments, unveiling the 3 night mounts to the world. Cairo, you ugly bastard! I never thought I will be happy. However, before Sergio could take a single step forward, a sudden aggressive whooshing sound was heard from above, attracting everyone's attention. The moment they lifted their heads, it was already too late. Chapter 19, Cover My Back. Boom! Nelvas fell from the sky akin to a meteor amidst the summoned mounts. Arthur and the rest were forced to reflexively shield their heads as they got hurled in different directions from the powerful shockwave. Timber, rocks, dirt, mud, everything was launched at a terrifying speed after them, bombarding them mid-flight. Despite the sudden assault and pain, Arthur instinctively twisted in midair, causing Levi to take the hit on his back. But it spared him from crashing into the solid trunk of an oak tree. Thud! Arthur flexed his muscles to the best of his ability, but the force was strong enough that it still knocked the air out of his chest. As he fell to the ground, his bloodshot eyes protruded from their sockets, while his mouth was wide open. Saliva coming out uncontrollably, but no air was coming in, just sharp exhales as he held onto his stomach tightly. Arthur! As Levi heard his brother's dry gasps, he completely forgot the scorching pain on his back after the bombardment. He placed his hand on his brother's chest and started telling him to breathe slowly while massaging it, knowing that it wouldn't help much. Meanwhile, Shia, Jamal, and Sergio had it better than them as the moment they were hit by the shockwave. Each one used their defensive innate abilities to protect themselves. Shia surrounded herself with crystallized blood armor. Jamal utilized a skin-tight spiritual barrier. And lastly, Sergio's fatty skin hardened into rocks. They immediately recovered and entered a protective formation, putting Arthur and Levi in its center. When Shia saw what happened to them, her expression turned bloodthirsty. Boys, are you all right? Arthur made an okay gesture with his hand while taking deep breaths, appearing like he was about to die at any second. Don't mind us and focus on him. He must be a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. Levi warned solemnly as he gazed at the terrifying spiritual gray aura in front of him. He had learned long ago that the intensity of spiritual auras defined the tier or rank of a Nightcrawler or any of the walkers. He used a simple technique to figure out a Nightcrawler's tier. If it was weak and feeble, it must be a Tier 1 Nightcrawler. If it was intense but contained in the figure, it must be a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. If it was in between, neither strong nor weak, it belonged to a Tier 2 Nightcrawler. As for the rest of the high-tiered Nightcrawlers, he had only seen upper-ranked Daywalkers' spiritual auras, and it was always wild or contained to perfection. When Shia and the rest heard that they might be dealing with a Tier 3 Nightcrawler, their shoulders tensed up while eyeing the cloud of dust in front. Nelvas's wavy shadow reflected behind the dusty cloud. He lifted his hands slowly and then, with a single clap, the dusty cloud was cleared out, exposing an unsightly scene. The white-feathered eagle, the shadowy horse, and the blue-furred wolf were lying in a puddle of blood, torn flesh, and guts spilling everywhere. Not a single twitch was spotted. They were utterly decimated inside a massive crater created by Nelvas. Sadly, you little children ain't going anywhere, Nelvas said casually while stretching his shoulder. Mira! Shia ignored him. Her crimson-red eyes were affixed on the brutal state of her dearest mount. She didn't need to hear her heartbeats to know that Mira was gone. The moment she died, the contractual link between them was cut off, causing the ink tattoo on her back to erase itself. This happened to Sergio and Jamal as well, leaving their expression to turn gloomy. Sergio, Jamal, keep the brothers safe and buy me some time. Shia uttered coldly while walking towards Nelvas, holding her crescent-bladed glaive with both hands. Seeing her current state, Sergio and Jamal knew that she was about to go all out. While they didn't know if it would be enough to deal with such a terrifying Tier 3 Nightcrawler, they could only put their trust in her and fulfill their part. Jamal, cover my back. Sergio extended his arm to the side, summoning a petrified cracked stone mace with a gleaming green light. The moment he tightened his grip on it, his skin started turning into rock as well, like he was touched by the curse of Medusa. The transformation didn't stop until his entire body was armored from top to bottom with a rocky skin, leaving only his eyes. Though he looked like a statue carved from stone, his movement was smooth as he swung his mace and rested it on his shoulder. Then, without an ounce of hesitation, Sergio charged toward the spider's army on his own, desiring to intercept them before they could get close and pincer his party. Sergio, Levi murmured as he watched Sergio's minuscule aura rushing toward an ocean of damnation. Although he was giving him ST from the moment they met, Levi never took it to heart, as he could tell that Sergio was simply a distrustful person. Whether he was blind or not had nothing to do with his behavior, since his brother had been taking the same sachet from him. But with time, his bad attitude lessened, and he started treating them as true members of his party after realizing that they were quite reliable even for citizens. Russell! The moment the spiders finished feasting on the growth totems and luminous snacks, they switched their attention to the closest heat signal to them. They saw only Shia, Levi, Arthur, Jamal, and Nelves. Just as they let out an ear-piercing screech and tried to kickstart their chase, a deep, rough voice resounded in their ears. Dark stone arts. Petrifying touch. Boom, boom, boom. The armored titan charged right through the biggest group of spiders and started smashing his mace barbarically. Each blow didn't just brutally blow up a spider, but tainted it with a green light that caused its exoskeleton to get petrified into stone. The broken-off cursed limbs and other body parts were sent flying everywhere, spreading the curse to anything they touched. This created great chaos amidst the army of spiders as all of them tried to attack and bite off Sergio, uncaring about the petrification curse. But Sergio knew what he was doing. His armored body protected him from the spiders' bites, their long, sharp fangs merely grazing against the stone skin. Yet the spiders were absolutely relentless, jumping one after another like they were part of a suicide mission. Although the petrification curse and Sergio's constant swinging were causing great damage, in the end he found himself buried under a mountain of spiders. This hindered his movement greatly, making it extremely difficult to swing his mace. Just when it looked like he would be buried to death, a piercing spiritual arrow appeared out of nowhere and penetrated the mountain of spiders. Kaboom! The following shockwave hurled all the spiders away, freeing Sergio at last. He glanced once in Jamal's direction and told him to keep them coming while he charged back to chaos. So strong, Arthur watched with a widened mouth at the duo's powerful synergy, having no idea how to react. They did nothing but repeat the process over and over again, yet it was enough to keep an army of spiders busy. They won't be able to keep this for long. On the other hand, Levi's expression was as grim as it could be. While he had no idea what was Sergio doing to keep the spiders occupied without dying, he knew it must be consuming an insane amount of solar energy. Usually this wouldn't be much of a problem, since most daywalkers packed a generous amount of growth totems to refuel their shadow life seeds when their stored solar energy was exhausted. However, they had just wasted all of them for nothing. It was even worse for Jamal, as his abilities were utilizing spiritual energy, which was a much more difficult source of energy to refuel. In other words, it was just a matter of time before Sergio's armor collapsed and Jamal started firing blank arrows. But they were told to buy time for Shia, and they would do it even if they collapsed in the process. Whoosh, whoosh! Meanwhile, Shia and Nelves weren't sitting idle. They were already trading blows tens of meters away from Levi. Somehow, Shia was matching up amazingly against Nelves, even though she was still a junior daywalker. How strong! No wonder none of the ambushes worked. Nelves raised an eyebrow as he blocked the crescent blade with his right arm. While he wasn't cut or even scratched, he could feel the potent force behind the swing. My normal attacks are doing nothing to him. Shia narrowed her eyes. Bleeder, we have to use it. Go for it. I have collected a decent amount of blood. Bleeder smiled coldly. The moment she received his approval, Shia bounced away from Nelves and brought her crescent blade near her wrist. Then she sliced the vein under Nelves's startled look, causing a fountain of blood to spew everywhere. Uncaring about everyone's stunned looks, Shia brought her wrist to her lips and started drinking her blood, causing her eyes to turn completely red and her heartbeats to accelerate beyond the human norm. The moment her vision turned bright red with only Nelves in sight, Shia wiped her lips with the right sleeve, smearing her cheek red. Then she dropped the weapon's shaft and held her crescent blade from a small handle in the center. I am about to get close and intimate. Shia showed a sinister grin as she uttered, Mantra Blood Arts. Blood Frenzy. Chapter 20. Mantra Blood Arts. Blood Frenzy. The instant the last word left her mouth, Shia appeared right next to Nelves's left thigh, hunching akin to a blood demon. Then she sliced the femoral artery, which was the main artery of the thigh. This time, neither Nelves reacted in time, nor did his tough skin survive the slash. Splash! Blood sprayed akin to water coming out of a hose, and Shia didn't waste a single drop of it as she swiftly placed herself in its direction, drinking it with a look of pure euphoria. Smack! You little demon! Nelves kicked Shia away with a look of great disturbance, and tightened his muscles, sealing the wound shut in an instant. "Your blood tastes horrid," Shia commentated while wiping her mouth, "but it will do the trick." Not giving him any time to react, Shia pounced in his direction akin to a panther, always keeping her body and head low. When Nelves saw that she was aiming for his left thigh this time, he swiftly lifted his knee to block the attack. But Shia switched her target at the last second, twisting her body in midair to strike his right waist, leaving behind a deep trench. This time, she didn't stop her assault at all. As the moment Nelves placed his hand on the wound, she swung from below at the back of his elbow, cutting off another major artery. Splash! You! Nelves got pissed and tried to predict her next movement by preemptively striking where she would land. Alas, Shia was like a serpentine, boneless and beyond flexible. His punch went past her face, missing her completely. When he tried to pull it back, Shia placed the sharp blade on its path, making him gush the bottom of his entire right arm. Then she opened her mouth below like a crazed freak, gulping down the blood nonstop. With each gulp, her crimson eyes blazed like she was recharging herself in the process. "What the fuck is this creep?" Nelves immediately tried to distance himself from Shia to heal his wounds and get a sense of what he was dealing with, but Shia refused to let him go. "Who told you I am done?" She chased after him with blood spilling from her lips and eyes gleaming red in the darkness, creating a harrowing scene for Arthur and the others. Ultimate innate ability, blood frenzy. This is the second time I've seen her use it. Jamal gulped a mouthful in dread, recalling some old memories. "Will she be okay?" Arthur asked nervously. "Okay? You should worry about the other. She won't stop until he either dies or she exhausts Bleeder's blood pool." Jamal refocused on helping Sergio with his arrows, fully trusting that Shia wouldn't lose against Nelves, even if he was a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. He wasn't confident for no reason. He knew that Tier 3 Nightcrawlers could range from insanely powerful to meh, all due to their evolutionary paths differing greatly from one to another. For example, Nelves could be a Nightcrawler who lucked out and ate a natural treasure that helped him evolve remarkably and obtain powerful abilities. Or a Nightcrawler who ate something that was just enough to evolve him, limiting his strength and potential greatly. In other words, just because a Nightcrawler was higher tiered, it didn't automatically give him a win. The same applied to Daywalkers. In the case of Shia, while she might be still a junior Daywalker, her true strength could rival that of a Pathfinder Daywalker, which was the next breakthrough. All due to her choosing remarkable evolution for her first breakthrough. Right now, she was teaching a grave lesson to Nelves for daring to target her as she made sure to not leave him even a moment of breather. The moment he tried to defend a spot, she sliced another. Her speed, flexibility, and reaction speed were simply too much for him. After a few moments of her demonic bombardment, Nelves was left completely bloodied, spilling everywhere and tainting his fur red. Now he truly looked like a devil. "He is bleeding, but all of my cuts are external." Shia narrowed her eyes coldly. "I have yet to strike his vitals." "Just leave him be. He should bleed to D." Before Bleeder could finish his sentence, Nelves cracked his neck with an indifferent expression. "I guess it's my fault for taking you lightly. I should have known Queen Drewebra wouldn't place a kill hit on a nobody." Nelves lifted his head until his bone-chilling gaze landed on Shia. But fun times are over. Immediately after, Nelves's muscles started to inflate, while his flesh wounds were healing at a noticeable speed simultaneously. In less than a few seconds, his body was almost double the size with muscles so overpumped, they threatened to blow the veins on their own. Nelves breathed ruggedly, his nostrils letting out heated steam, seemingly having difficulty maintaining this form. "Shit, the fucker is an enhancement-type Nightcrawler," Bleeder shouted. "Make a run for it, Shia." Bleeder could tell that Nelves was already a strong entity after he suffered from so many attacks from Shia and still hadn't fallen. Now that he knew Nelves specialized in enhancement, he realized Shia stood no chance against him in his current empowered state. Shia heard her partner, but she didn't move an inch. She merely glanced behind at the Larson brothers and then refocused on Nelves, who was walking towards her. "I am their guardian, and I promise to get them back home safely," Shia said coldly, They ain't dying under my watch. Not waiting until Nelves made his move, Shia disappeared out of sight, sprinting in his direction while staying low. This time, she threw her crescent blade at a great speed toward him while keeping a respectful distance. Alas, the crescent blade bounced off Nelves's shoulder blade, making a clinging noise akin to hitting a solid metal. The crescent blade curved back like a boomerang, and Shia caught it with a grim expression. Time to die. Nelves smiled once, and then he smashed his fist on the ground, sending out a powerful seismic shockwave. Shia knew that her legs would be gone if she ate the shockwave directly, forcing her to jump away. But the moment she did this, Nelves was already lying in wait. He entered a kicking position and launched a giant rock in her direction at a blistering speed. When Shia saw the size of the rock, she knew that it was nearly impossible to twist her body and evade it. She lifted her arms and braced for impact, using her crystallized blood shield to protect her. Alas, the rock was just too much. Boom! The crystallized blood shattered upon impact, slowing the rock's momentum for a bit. But it was not enough. It smashed Shia's forearm bones to pieces and hurled her flying in the direction of Jamal, Levi, and Arthur. Come on, Shia, we can't hold on much long. Before Jamal could finish his sentence, his eyes captured the sight of a bloodied body rolling at great speed in front of them. After a few bounces, it stopped against a tree, lying motionless. Arthur, Jamal, and even Levi turned their heads to gaze at the motionless body. Though Levi couldn't see her, her spiritual aura was so faint it felt like she could die at any moment. Sashan! Jamal stuttered for a moment and then shouted her name with a petrified expression. Seeing no response, his heart dropped to the bottom of his stomach. Follow me, he shouted at the Larson brothers while he rushed in her direction. When he arrived, he reached out to his backpack and pulled out a wooden pink totem in the shape of a small bottle. He smacked it on Arthur's chest while yelling at him to feed it to her. Then he aimed his bow in the direction of Nelves, who was seen knocking down trees with a single arm swing as he headed to finish the job. Arthur looked at the pink totem with parted lips, looking like he had no idea what to do with it. Knowing that his brother never interacted with recovery totems or was attentive enough to listen in his classes, Levi reached out with his hand randomly until he touched the totem in his brother's hand. He swiftly snatched it and opened the bottle. Then he ordered him sternly, "Open her mouth and help me pour it." Still shaken, Arthur did as he was told. As Levi was pouring a pink liquid into Shia's mouth, he was mumbling the incantation to activate it. By the golden rays of dawn's light, awaken now, restore, and ignite. With the warmth of the sun and the strength of the day, heal all wounds and mend dismay. The moment he finished, the pink liquid illuminated brightly within Shia's body, making her muddled eyes gain some focus. Although it hadn't healed her wounds yet, the pink liquid numbed the agonizing pain and focused on dealing with the grave internal injuries first. The first thing she saw was Nelves's shadow looming closer behind Levi and Arthur. She knew that Jamal wasn't going to stand up against him, not in his current exhausted state. "G.O. to Sir Gio," she whispered with great difficulty, coughing out blood in the process. Through the noise of falling trees and Sergio's constant chaotic battle, no one would have heard her. But Levi did. His sensitive ears picked up on everything, and he swiftly relayed the news to Jamal and Arthur. Although the order sounded ludicrous and suicidal, Jamal knew that it wasn't time to question if Levi heard wrong or not. On the other hand, Arthur didn't even waste a split second questioning his brother. He picked Levi and Shia in both arms and sprinted towards the army of spiders. A mere mortal, a mere civilian, running to his damnation. Shock dart! Jamal clears the path towards Sergio with a single arrow while chasing after Arthur. Still, a few spiders were on his way. Arthur immediately placed Shia and Levi above his shoulders and charged through spiders with his head lowered and roaring at the top of his lungs. He kneed some spiders, hurling them away, but a few others managed to sink their fangs deeply into his thighs, waist, and even his glutes. All Arthur could do was continue roaring, his bloodshot eyes affixed on no one but Sergio, who was watching them with buckled knees. He was already drop-dead tired, holding on through pure will and hope that Shia was going to save their asses. But as he looked at her dangling from Arthur's shoulder, that hope was extinguished and was replaced with a despairing laugh. We are fucked, aren't we, Othniel?